Assembly Bureau, and Subrata Sina, Secretary to the Forum of Ministers and Environment Authorities of Asia and the Pacific. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, it is now my honor to invite Dr. Deshen Sering, UN Environment Regional Director and representative for Asia and the Pacific, to deliver her welcome address.
Your Excellencies, honorable guests, senior officials, colleagues, Dr. Ramon Paye, Dr. Vijan Simachaya, His Excellency Mr. Raza Bashir Tarar, Vice Chair for Asia Pacific Committee of Permanent Representative for the Bureau for UN Environment Program, colleagues. I'm extremely pleased to welcome you here today for the senior official segment of the Asia Pacific Ministerial Summit that UN Environment Program and the UN Economic Social Commission for Asia Pacific have co-organized and co-convened. During this week, you will focus on addressing the challenges of resource efficiency and pollution reduction in our region under the theme Towards a Resource-Efficient, Pollution-Free Asia Pacific. The convening of this week's second forum of ministers and environment authorities is in response to the second UN Environment Assembly resolution in 2016, which called on UN Environment to support and to facilitate convening of regional forums of ministers of the environment. This forum is an important platform for strengthening the engagement of member states in our region in the preparation to and follow-up to the sessions of the UN Environment Assembly. I hope this forum will provide you an opportunity to review progress in the region and how we've implemented the resolutions from the first and second UN Environment Assembly, and really look at how we provide inputs to draft resolutions for the upcoming third session of the UN Environment Assembly. We have 5 draft resolutions, and we also have one from the region which looks at synchronizing meetings related to multilateral environmental agreements and related environment meetings. We have until September 21st, so there is still time for new resolutions to be proposed. Ladies and gentlemen, on World Environment Day this year, our Secretary General Antonio Guterres noted that environment is the keystone of a sustainable future, and he said, without a healthy environment, we cannot end poverty or build prosperity. We have a role to play in protecting our only home. We can use less plastics, we can drive less, we can waste less food. And this is a challenge we all face. Every nation here has its own environmental priorities and challenges, and I believe by addressing common challenges together, we can create a strong force for positive, meaningful environmental change. We know that we're going through unprecedented period and pace of environmental change, but we also know that pollution today is one of the most significant challenges that we face. If we start to look at our region, I mean, we have impressive economic growth. We look at the numbers that have been lifted out of poverty, but we still have numbers, and our region still accounts for a large number of the extremely poor. Deprivations in health and living standards are striking. We start to look at air pollution and the numbers that die prematurely every year, high mortality rates. We have some of the cleaner cities, and we have some of the most polluted cities. We talk about municipal solid waste generation. We talk about the tons of plastic that end up in the ocean. But if we start to think about the positive actions, we know that right action can stem the toxic flow of plastics. We know that countries in our region, private companies, are phasing out single use of plastic bags. We see initiatives spearheaded by Bangladesh, India, Indonesia, Fiji. And we also see very clearly the links between environment and health. We start to look at livelihoods, we look at fishery, tourism sectors that depend heavily on marine ecosystems. Chemicals, again, is brought to the forefront, and our region, we're looking at chemicals like mercury, we're looking at burning of coal, gold mining, hazardous agrochemicals. And again, we're looking at an area for our region really to take action. Unplanned urbanization, lifestyle choices, mismanagement, water waste, cross-boundary air pollution, deforestation. We know the challenges, but we know collectively we can step up to address air pollution that harms people's health and well-being. We know we need to clean up waste and wastewater contaminants. And we know we need to prevent future pollutants through a circular economy approach and eliminating highly hazardous substances such as mercury. Because resource use and pollution are so closely linked to economic, social, environmental costs and impacts, they require an integrated policy approach. Such an integrated approach, I believe, draws on expertise and resources from within government, from private sector, civil society, communities, partners, and we can make a shift in productivity and resource use in line with the Sustainable Development Goals. We look forward to hearing the outcomes of the Asia-Pacific Regional Civil Society Engagement Mechanism. They met here in Bangkok for a preparatory meeting this week. We also look forward to hearing from private sector representatives who've been active during the various side events organized this week. But I would like to encourage honorable members to share your knowledge and experience. There is much we can learn from each other. From His Former Majesty, the King of Thailand's efficiency economy here in Thailand, we're looking at ecological civilization, the 3R approach, looking at gross national happiness index, to the blue economy approach in the Pacific. Our region has recognized the urgency of embarking on green economic pathways to sustainable development, or green economy in a blue world approach in the Pacific. Leadership shown by member states from this region on the global stage can also provide a valuable opportunity to share our perspectives. Leadership shown by you, senior officials, have also made tremendous impact, both at the global, regional, and national level. To name an example, maybe we can look to Fiji. I mean, this year they've taken tremendous leadership as President of the General Assembly, co-host of the UN Oceans Conference, and President of the upcoming 23rd Conference of Parties to the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change Secretariat. And they're bringing together the oceans issue, resilience to climate change, and adaptation. All the work, one of our other purpose this week really is for the UN Environment Asia Pacific Office to ensure that the work we do directly supports priorities and issues of concerns to your governments. We want to ensure that the work that we're doing in the policy sphere, the legal sphere, programs and policies, projects, advocacy reflects your concern. Since we have a full agenda, and in order to ensure that you all have a chance to discuss and debate, I would like to now hand over to Permanent Secretary Dr. Vijan Simachaya, who has kindly agreed to preside over this opening session. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Dr. Daisen Sherling, Regional Director of the UN Environment for Asia and the Pacific. His Excellency Ramon J.P. Pache, Vice President for Asia and the Pacific, UN Environment Assembly Bureau. Excellency, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Royal Thai Government of the Kingdom of Thailand and the Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment of Thailand, it is my great pleasure to welcome all of you to the senior officials segment of the second forum of Minister and Environmental Authority of the Asia Pacific, held here again in Bangkok, where the first session was successfully conducted here. At this, the regional preparation for the third session of UN Environment Assembly or UNIA, which will be held in December this year in Kenya, its theme toward a pollution-free planet will be applied here as well. I believe we all agree that the Regional Ministerial Forum on Environment is important to reflect not only the current environmental issue but also the future trend of the region. The Asia-Pacific Forum is to review the progress of the implementation of UN resolution in our region. Besides, the member states will have opportunities to discuss the regional priority and provide some recommendation to the path toward a pollution-free planet. During the meeting, the explicit report on the subject matters will be prepared for consideration in the draft solution of the third session of UNEA. Recently, Thailand has confronted the same air pollution as several other big cities in the region. Therefore, air pollution together with water pollution and solid waste is considered our challenge due to the rapid expansion of the cities. Plastic debris, as mentioned by Dr. Dessen, is also very important. Plastic debris is transboundary in nature and impact to the marine ecosystem. This issue is very important to us. We have to work together to tackle the problem in regional cooperation. The regional senior officials are also asked to actively share recommendations to the draft declaration of the third union. Such declaration will be an ambitious message encouraging the world leader as well as everyone to be aware of the harmful effect of the pollution on health, environment, economy, and society as well. On this occasion, I do hope all of us will gain productive output to be considered for the ministerial meeting on the next days, along with some helpful recommendation to the third session of UNEA for paving the way toward pollution-free planet. Thank you very much. I would like to invite His Excellency Dr. Ramon J.P. Piche, Vice President for Asia and the Pacific UN Environmental Assembly Bureau, to deliver the inaugural address. His Excellency Dr. Ramon, please.
Thank you very much. Dr. Vijayan Samachaya, Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment, Thailand. Dr. Jetson Charing, Regional Director and Representative for Asia and the Pacific, UN Environment. His Excellency Ambassador Raza Basir Tarar, Vice Chair for Asia Pacific Committee and Permanent Representative of CPR Bureau, and Permanent Representative of Pakistan to the United Nations Environment, Honorable Heads of Delegation, representatives of UN agencies, and a special mention to the civil society who worked so hard the other day to help us in pursuing a pollution-free planet. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I would like to extend a warm welcome to all of you to the senior official segment of the second Forum of Ministers and Environment Authorities of Asia Pacific. The Asia Pacific Ministerial Summit on the Environment brings together for the first time two United Nations ministerial level meetings on the environment, namely the second session of the UN Environment's Forum of Ministers and Environment Authorities of Asia Pacific and ESCAP's 7th Ministerial Conference on Environment and Development in Asia and the Pacific. As we are aware, the UN Environment Assembly is now one of the key global international meetings on sustainability as shown in UNEA 2, where some 170 countries participated, of which 123 were at the ministerial level. 27 UN agencies and 15 international organizations and over 400 civil society organizations were actively involved. Nearly 600 businesses and foundations joined the Sustainable Innovation Expo, and over 250 top scientists participated in the Science and Policy Forum. UNE2 adopted 25 resolutions in 2016, covering issues of direct relevance to Asia Pacific, such as marine plastic litter and microplastics, oceans and seas, sustainable coral reefs management, mainstreaming of biodiversity for well-being, sound management of chemicals and wastes, illegal trade in wildlife and wildlife products, Samoa Pathway, delivering on the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and supporting the Paris Agreement. UNEA 2 also adopted a resolution number 2/2, on role and functions of the regional forums of ministers of environment and environment authorities, and requested the executive director within the mandate of the UN Environment to support and to facilitate convening and or strengthening the existing regional forum, as we have now. The first Forum of Ministers and Environment Authorities of Asia Pacific, held in May 2015 here in Bangkok, requested the Executive Director of UN Environment to hold regular sessions, convening every 2 years. The decision and recommendations of this second Forum of Ministers and Environment Authorities of Asia Pacific will directly feed into the third session of the United Nations Environment Assembly to be held in December 2017 in Nairobi. The third session of the United Nations Environment Assembly, or UNEA 3, works under the theme Towards a Pollution-Free Planet, as adopted in the recent retreat of the UNEA Bureau and the Committee on Permanent Representatives in Costa Rica. UNEA 3 is expected to adopt an international action agenda involving political leaders, citizens, private sectors, and UN organizations and treaties to address some of the most pervasive forms of pollution. The Assembly aims to deliver a number of tangible commitments to end the pollution of our air, land, waterways, and oceans, and to safely manage our chemicals and wastes. These will include the following: a political declaration on pollution linked to the Sustainable Development Goals, to signal that humanity can work together to eliminate the threat of pollution and the destruction of our planet. Resolutions and decisions adopted by member states to address specific dimensions of pollution. Voluntary commitments by governments, private sector entities, and civil society organizations to clean up the planet. And the Clean Planet Pledge, a collection of individual commitments to take personal action to end pollution in all its forms. The second Forum of Ministers and Environment Authorities of Asia Pacific provides us with a chance to review how our decisions and resolutions have been put into action in the region and help identify the region's inputs to the United Nations Environment Assembly in December 2017. This meeting will also review a draft document on institutional arrangements for the future Forum of Ministers and Environment Authorities of Asia Pacific. I am sure that this second forum will play a critical role in building consensus on the environmental dimensions of sustainable development and help build a clearer voice for Asia Pacific at the United Nations Environment Assembly, as well as across the UN in its processes. Finally, I would like to express my gratitude to the Royal Thai government for presiding over the opening session and delivering the welcome address. I am also grateful to all member states for sending the high-level delegation with special mentions to Ambassador Tarar for his availability and guidance to the forum. I am honored to deliver this inaugural address and look forward to successful deliberation in the Asia-Pacific Ministerial Summit on the environment. Thank you and good morning.
Thank you very much, His Excellency Dr. Ramon Piche, for the inaugural address. Shall we move to the next agenda? Excellency, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, we now move to the election of the officer of the senior official segment of the second forum of the Minister and Environmental Authority of Asia Pacific. The conference will elect a chair and two vice chairs to serve as the bureau for the senior officer segment. I now open the floor for any nomination for the position of a chair and two vice chair. Any proposal? Thank you. Indonesia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have the honor to propose the election of the following distinguished representative for the Bureau of the Senior Official Segment. As a chair, I would like to propose His Excellency Mr. Taifu Lemi, Associate Minister, Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment, Samoa. And as a co-chair, Mr. Said Abu Ahmad Akif, Federal Secretary, Ministry of Climate Change, Pakistan. And Mr. Suho Seong, Director of International Cooperation Division, Ministry of Environment, Republic of Korea. I'm sure that the distinguished delegates which I have proposed will discharge their duties efficiently for the successful deliberation of this senior official segment. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, distinguished delegate of Indonesia, for this proposal. Would anyone wish to second this proposal? Okay. I recognize the distinguished delegate from Maldives. Do you have the floor?
Thank you and good morning, colleagues. We would like to second the nomination made by the distinguished delegate from Indonesia for the Bureau of the Senior Officials meeting, with His Excellency Mr. Taifu Lemi, Associate Minister of Natural Resources and Environment of Samoa, as Chair, and Mr. Said Abu Ahmad Akif, Federal Secretary of the Ministry of Climate Change of Pakistan, and Mr. Suho Song, Director of International Cooperation Division of the Ministry of Environment, Republic of Korea, as Vice Chairs. As a distinguished delegate from Indonesia expressed, we are confident that the nominated representatives will discharge their duties efficiently and effectively in guiding our deliberations here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, distinguished delegates of the Maldives, for your proposal. Any other proposal on this? I see none. It is therefore my order to confirm that the following delegates have been elected as officer of the senior official segment of the forum. The chair will be His Excellency Mr. Rami Taifu, Associate Minister, Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment from Samoa, and two vice chair, including Mr. Syed Abu Ahmed Akif, Federal Secretary, Ministry of the Climate Change from Pakistan, and Mr. Suho Song, Director of International Cooperation Division, Ministry of Environment, Republic of Korea. Thank you very much. Now, it is my privilege to congratulate the elected member of the Bureau, as I mentioned earlier. Now I wish them all the best for your work ahead. And may I now invite Mr. Chair, His Excellency Mr. Rami Taifu, Associate Minister, Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment from Samoa, to take a seat and to continue our session. Thank you very much, His Excellency, Mr. Chair. I think now I would like to ask you to make some brief remarks for the opening session. Thank you very much. I think I have an urgent issue have to read now. I would like to take the floor to His Excellency Mr. Chair to continue the meeting. Thank you very much.
Your Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, from the middle of the Pacific Ocean, I greet you by saying Talofa lava. It is indeed an honor and a privilege for me to serve as the chair of this important session, second forum of the Ministers and Environment Authority of Asia Pacific. For myself, and on behalf of the other members of the Bureau, I wish to express our appreciation to the distinguished representatives, Indonesia and the Maldives, and the delegates of this meeting for the confidence that you have placed in us. We have a challenging agenda ahead of us, and as chair of this second forum of ministers and environment authorities of Asia Pacific, I shall do my best to ensure that this meeting achieves its objectives and produces meaningful outcomes for our future work together. In this connection, I would like to rely on the spirit of cooperation and involvement of all distinguished delegates and the able support of our members of the Bureau. And I also wish to thank the Secretariat for its organization of this second Forum of Ministers and Environment Authority of Asia Pacific, and I am sure we can count on its continued support. I would also like to express particular appreciation to Dr. Daishin Serene, UN Environment Regional Director and Representative for Asia Pacific, Dr. Wijan Simachaya, Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment, Thailand, and His Excellency, Dr. Ramon J.B. Bahe, Vice President of Asia and Pacific, UN Environment Assembly Bureau. Your Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, let us now turn to agenda item 6C on the adoption of the agenda, as presented to you in document ESCAP/MCED bracket 7/L.1-UNEP/ABENV forum bracket 2/L.1. Before I present the agenda for endorsement, I propose to swap agenda item 10 and agenda item 11. Agenda item 10, adoption of the 12th outcome of the second Forum of Ministers and Environment Authority of Asia Pacific, and agenda item 11, adoption of report of the senior officials of the 7th Ministerial Conference of Environment and Development in Asia and the Pacific. I would like to recall that the geographical coverage of the United Nations Environment Programme Regional Office for Asia and the Pacific include 41 member states. They are Afghanistan, Australia, Bangladesh, Bhutan, Brunei, Cambodia, China, Cook Islands, Democratic Republic, People's Republic of Korea, Fiji, India, Indonesia, Iran, Japan, Kiribati, Laos People's Democratic Republic, Malaysia, the Maldives, Marshall Islands, the Federated State of Micronesia, Mongolia, Myanmar, Nauru, Nepal, New Zealand, Niue, Pakistan, Palau, Papua New Guinea, the Philippines, the Republic of Korea, Samoa, Singapore, Solomon Islands, Sri Lanka, Thailand, East Timor-Leste, Tonga, Tuvalu, Vanuatu, and Vietnam. However, we would like to extend a warm welcome to our other delegates to this meeting. I now open the floor for any comment or observation or amendment to the agenda as proposed. Any comment? I see no comment. Therefore, the agenda is adopted with the amendment. I take it that the revised agenda contained in document, as previously mentioned, is now adopted. Your Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, this concludes the opening session. I thank you for your cooperation and in adopting the agenda of the second Forum of Ministers and Environment Authority of Asia Pacific. I now hand the floor over for announcement from the Secretariat.
Just a few quick practical announcements before the break. For the collection of DSA, this can be collected in front of this conference room number 2. There's an open Wi-Fi for this meeting, titled UN Wi-Fi, and it's open access. No password is needed. Should you be in need of a travel agency, this is located at the first floor. Fourth floor in the service building. We also have banking facilities, which is available at the UN Conference Center first floor. We have a prayer room available at the UN Conference Center second floor. Should you be in need of first aid, we have a medical facility at the ground floor just behind the coffee shop. Since this is a paperless and green forum, you can access all the documents through apministerialenv.org. And for social media, the hashtags are hashtag APENVforum and hashtag ENV Asia Pacific. For bilateral meeting rooms, kindly contact the Secretariat and we will assist you with that. We're on schedule, I see, so enjoy the break and see you all back here at 10 o'clock. Thank you.
But then they should come to opening, you know. Opening is very important. Full.
มีอะไรส่งมาแล้วนะฮะสวัสดีครับนะครับเรื่อง ATC arrangement นะครับครับทางคุณซูโมโต้ได้ส่งให้ทางคุณกัญจนานะครับ
I know there is a spot for international
เขาให้ใช้ชื่อตามนั้นเลยใช่ไหม
after the break, then there will be a person, someone will speak, and then I will open the floor. But the order will be ETB first, then international organization. So I will open the floor for a while.
ก็คือไฮไลท์เป็นใช่ไหมครับแล้ว
Next item, I will introduce the speakers, then open the floor. And there will be other
การ
sessions
เตรียมไว้แล้วว่าที่เด็ดที่จบ
three times when we open the floor.
โอเคคือยังไงก็ตามซีนาริโอใช่ไหมครับคุณตาครับถ้าเป็นไปตามนั้นก็ตามซีนาริโอเลยครับ ช่วงที่ปิดนะครับก็คือจะต้องปิดสมุดที่
Very kind of you.
Can Cambodia
For
speak English
some tea. Yeah.
tomorrow? Yeah, okay. You would like it hot coffee or soft coffee? Soft coffee
ค
better.
รับก็คือซึ่งคุณงานธนามีไฮไลท์เอาไว้เรียบร้อยแล้วใช่ไหมครับยังไงเดี๋ยวพี่จะทำงานลองคุยดูนะครับเชิญครับ
Yes, yes, yes.
Pagi.
ยังไงรบกวนด้วยนะครับ
So you broke the meeting. Not yet content.
Thank you. Yeah, so far.
Just if I can, 1 second. No, our minister has a term discussion tomorrow. He will be making a statement also. So was discussion,
Yeah, yeah.
especially on joint unit.
Right, collaboration. Yeah.
We have some
We have Janet didn't give it to you. Our colleague, I particularly instructed Janet to give it to you.
just some ready-made things to just forward to you.
We have. I instructed her to give it to you yesterday. Yesterday.
Incorporate in the
Absolutely, absolutely. We have such a long-standing collaboration.
I can give it to my colleague Tenzin and we should
Yeah, exactly, exactly. I get it. I ensure that you are getting it.
you have my email, no?
Yes, I have, but ensure that she is coming and giving it here also, the hard copy, soft copy, everything. Yeah. Yeah. Any pressing thing?
It's about 70% of all the...
Okay.
There's still a chance.
Signature for?
We are not able to contact Mr. Kamal Singh, no?
Yeah, that's the problem.
But I'm sure you will have better information.
Yeah, we have. We will be secretary.
You are all the information.
You will be here, no? Did you meet the teacher also?
Yes, I just contacted.
Okay, so let me, behind scene, let me get her. She's not picking up. Yesterday I wanted to ensure that it's given to Tenjin, but I don't know whether it's given to Tenjin already.
No, she hasn't got
Okay, I ensure that. Can you call Janet? Yes.
At 10?
At 10 o'clock. There's a lot of pavilion exhibitions, a lot of things going on.
Hi, Janet. Yes.
ทีครับ
Yes, please.
So we just go, it is start with the beginning. It's not cast. So I just go, I have the honor to present a review of implementation of the resolutions adopted by UN Environment Assembly and to discuss regional priorities for UN Environment Program nations. Next. The presentation will cover two parts. First, we will review progress in implementation of resolutions, and the second part, we will review priorities, implementation gaps, and the way forward. Next. Okay, move next, right? 42 resolutions adopted during the first and second session of the UN Environment Assembly. Here are some of the key resolutions Asia Pacific is implementing based on the 6 different sub-programs. On climate change, we've achieved much progress. The focus has been really on building, providing support for technology needs assessments, providing support for adaptation and mitigation, and facilitating access to climate finance. We focused on access to climate finance through accreditation of national entities, supporting countries on national policy roadmaps, transform markets for energy efficient devices, providing support to national adaptation plans, and helping countries set up international mechanisms supporting national contribution, implementing projects on ecosystem-based adaptation. Here the focus really has been on facilitating access to resources for biodiversity, land, water management initiatives. We have provided support, facilitated access to over 600 million. Some of the examples are the Dugong seagrass conservation projects, where we work with local fishing communities for alternative income sources, research planning for conservation, and reducing direct impacts of dugong population and seagrass beds. We've done some work on forest certification. We've also provided support to the Convention on Biological Diversity and the Convention on Illegal Diversity of Species, providing support to the Northwest Pacific Action Plan for Native Bodies Seas of East Asia. Here the focus has been on strengthening laws and institutions to safeguard species and habitats. A prominent flagship campaign has been the Wild for Life campaign. We've also worked to support the Asia Pacific Symposium to strengthen legal frameworks for wildlife reform. It was convened this year. We've supported national level support in strengthening legislation in Southern Islands. In chemicals, I think a significant achievement is the entry into force of the article mercury, strengthened participation efforts in national policies, regulations on lead paint, had the Montreal Protocol where
Welcome back.
Thank you very much.
You're looking very elegant, I must say. Is it a classic dress?
Yes.
Very, very smart.
Ambassador Raza talked about you this morning.
Dear, what did he say?
So he says, Stadler very bravely said that UN Environment could change its name.
They can.
He says, I don't think they can. Stadler very bravely said.
But he should, I didn't really say that. But it's a long discussion. It's a long discussion.
But yesterday's meeting was good.
Everything is fine. Everything is fine. As long as the name issue doesn't creep into your meeting, yeah. All right.
And I'm trying to really be careful. I'm trying to say UN Environment Program. I'm just trying to stick with that.
Or you can say the program.
The program. But you know, I've been traveling with Eric. And so now, I was looking at that to okay, program.
Yes. Has he arrived here? Okay, where is he now? Okay.
So I was with him till last evening, and then he went to Osaka today.
How are you?
And this morning we tried to choreograph it so Dr. Paye talked about Unaria and I talked about the region.
Right.
So it's
Okay.
not boring.
Good. Yeah. Anyway.
Did you see Oleg?
Yes. You know, it's of course you must know.
I looked and I said, I looked down and I said, I don't believe I see
Thank you very much. Yes, I saw Oleg. Yeah. You know, he applied for several jobs at UNO. You didn't know this? What happened was he applied for several jobs, and Oleg didn't get past the first interview. Apparently, he had 2 interviews and he didn't get past the first interview. So Oleg had an interview. So whenever we were talking about the university process, rules and institutional arrangements, Oleg would sound off like crazy.
The only time he was really nice to us was in Paris when he was really worried about his speaking skills. Everything went well and it was so relieved. He was so nice to us. Oh goodness. And a colleague of mine, a Russian colleague of mine, told me, oh, you have a very active. I think he's the deputy. And he's going to be very active. It's not in his nature to stay quiet.
No, but Oleg is based in Moscow.
Countries, they actually they have one on the table, on the desk. There's a one with a so they can they can
He will follow up.
Well, they may use it for meetings. Anyway, I don't. Lovely to talk to you. Yes.
Governance, voluntary commitments, climate air quality climatic working group, and then the next is resource efficiency together with policy development, environmental consumption through various programs, awareness raising, over 1,200 staff in different ministries, key institutions for training and sustainable consumption production, different aspects, ministerial public-private dialogue meetings were held in many countries, reported on the ground. The focus has been here on the Asia-Pacific assessment of the Global Environmental Outlook 6, capacity building for environmental reporting, emission gap reports, eco-restoration and wealth creation report, sustainable development goals indicated above. On the similar part, if you look at progress, it's really looking at the joint implementation of the Pacific Roadmap for the SDGs and Sustainable Pathway, strengthening of Pacific office, increase engagement in Pacific partnerships, cleanup Pacific Partnership, Pacific Ocean Alliance, Pacific Association of Tables, revised national environmental policies and sustainable development goals, projects, global environmental facility projects to establish national market databases, and pilot support of sustainable development goal integration into national sustainable development strategies and similar. The way forward, regional priorities, implementation gaps. We've really looked at, based upon the first forum of ministers and environment authorities in Asia Pacific, and some of the assessment reports, how we address climate change and build resilience, how we decouple resource use from economic growth, how we decarbonize energy, protect natural capital, ecosystem integrity. Including highlight biodiversity notion, develop integrated approaches to environment and health, especially to address air quality and respond to environmental risk, management of chemicals and waste, scale up environmental action through sustainable development goals, strengthen cooperation, governments, institutions, strong scientific basis, policy making, and knowledge. If you look at in the executive director's report towards pollution-free plan, it identified gaps in implementation. I mean, some of the key gaps were lack of resources, inadequate administrative financial institutional capacity, absence of interministerial coordination, and often lack of political will. Some of the enablers was balance between evidence-based decision-making, proportional approaches, strengthening governance, education for change, cooperation, and partnership. Key questions for the session. In review implementation, how can we in Asia Pacific further strengthen implementation of resolutions in this region? What other mechanisms should be explored? And on priorities, are these priorities reflective of the important issues facing the region and the new priorities? How can we in the region move forward in responding to these priorities, considering existing resolutions leading up to the third session of the UN Environmental Assembly and the next Forum of Ministers on Environment? Okay, very good. Thank you. I will not run so fast. Thank you.
Hey, how was your trip? Okay.
I just wanted to ask, driving systems for
Right. There's a printer and you make photocopies and print documents. Yeah. Let me know if you have any documents. Print it out.
คือจริงๆเนี่ยผมก็ไม่รู้ไงว่าอยู่ในลานประชุมยังไงผมก็เลยคิดว่าจะมา
ใช่ครับจริงๆแล้วมันเป็นอย่างนี้ครับคือสมมติเขาบอกว่าทางสไตล์ของเรากับสไตล์จะไม่เหมือนกันแต่ทีเนี้ยครับเขาบอกว่าให้ทางESCAPลองแนะนำว่าถ้าสมมติมีช่องโหว่เราได้มาประชุม
ว่าตรงไหนที่มันจุดเล็กๆน้อยๆอะไรพวก
แล้ว
นี้
ก็มาบอกเดี๋ยวผมจะไปบอกเขาแล้วก็ช่วยติดตามก็อย่างนี้ก็คือทำให้ช่วยทำเพราะว่าของทางเราไม่เคยมาประชุมด้วยกันก็เลยจะไม่รู้
แล้วส่วนเรื่องเมนเทนเมื่อกี้เคลียร์หรือยังว่า
ก็เคลียร์แล้วครับตรงนี้คุณเจษนาก็จะต้องดิวกับผู้เข้า
ที่จะใช้
เพราะว่าจริงๆแล้วที่สุนทรโตบอกผมว่าเขาส่งข้อมูลอะไร
ไม่แล้วทางคือทางเราเนี่ยเราหมายถึงว่าเราสตาร์ทเราเลยเราต้องไปคอยเปลี่ยนใช่ไหม
ต้องก็คือเดี๋ยวเขาจะมีทางทีมเขาแล้วก็มีหัวหน้าเขาที่เป็นฝรั่งด้วย
ไม่นั่นแหละคือ CMU กันก็คือมาแบบ
ก็คือทางทีมอยู่กันเรียนครับครับ
ก็แปลว่าทำเร็ว
ใช่
So we'll start with 7, huh?
Yes.
So we have to announce to get people. Yeah? I will arrange to get people in there. Yeah. You have to call people. How do you can you round them up?
Yeah, sure.
Bring them wherever they are. Okay. Tell them we are ready to do the session. I have to tell other colleagues. Is there any announcement from here that the people should come in? Here. No. Where is Henry? Henry can't be speaking. Please announce.
Ladies and gentlemen, the session is about to start, so kindly take your seats so that we can begin. Thank you.
Can you bring people? Can you square them? Sure. Square them in. Just get them.
Your Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, we'll now come to agenda item 7, review of implementation in Asia and the Pacific of the resolution adopted by the United Nations Environment Assembly at its second session in 2016, and discussion of regional priorities for the United Nations Environment Program in Asia and the Pacific. And to start us with this particular agenda item, I have the honor of inviting Dr. Deshin Sering, Regional Director of UN Environment, Asia and the Pacific, to present to us a progress in implementation in Asia and the Pacific of the resolution adopted by the United Nations Environment Assembly and the key regional priorities and emerging issues for Asia and Pacific as contained in the UNEP ABENV Forum Bracket 2/1. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. Serene.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Honorable delegates, I have the pleasure to present a review of implementation in the Asia-Pacific region of resolutions adopted by the UN Environment Assembly as its second session, and to discuss regional priorities for the program in Asia and Pacific. My brief presentation will really cover two parts. First, I will review progress and implementation of resolutions, and then I will look to review regional priorities, implementation gaps, and the way forward. If we look at resolutions from the first session of the UN Environment Assembly and the second session, we really look at and the key resolutions that we are implementing based on the different sub-programs. We're looking at issues relating to climate change, how we support the Paris Agreement, and how we support adaptation. We're looking at issues under ecosystem management. Again, we see marine plastics, microplastics, oceans and seas, coral reef management, mainstreaming biodiversity, and enhancing our work and cooperation among the biodiversity-related conventions. And we're looking at illegal trade in wildlife and wildlife products under governance, chemicals and waste. And here the focus has really been on air quality, sand and dust storms, resource efficiency, sustainable consumption and production, and the environment under review. In climate change, honorable delegates, the focus has been, one aspect really has been in helping countries report. This is helping them report national communications, helping them report under the biannual update reporting, providing capacity in terms of building negotiations capacity. And then the other focus has been looking at strengthening adaptation, facilitating national adaptation plans, providing support to providing access to finance and technology. And we start to look at, we facilitated access to finance, it's about 60 million. There's been work to help countries prepare sort of technology needs assessment, technology action plans. And quite a lot of work, especially in Southeast Asia, looking at mitigation measures, transforming markets for energy efficiency appliances, providing access to technologies. And there has been some work on supporting countries detail out nationally determined contributions, and some work and some projects on ecosystem-based adaptation. Next. On ecosystem management, several resolutions, the focus has been in helping countries access resources for biodiversity, land, water management initiatives. So when we look at some of the projects, especially in our region, we facilitated about $600 million. And if we look at some of the projects, and primarily a large amount of the resources are from the Global Environment Facility, it's projects like forest certification for ecosystem services, dugong and seagrass conservation project. There's also been work to help countries with the biodiversity-related conventions, and we're looking at supporting the Convention on Biological Diversity, the Conference of Parties, Convention on Illegal Trade of Endangered Species, helping reporting, helping enhancing synergies among biodiversity-related conventions, and some support in supporting the National Biodiversity Strategy and Action Plans and linking them to Sustainable Development Goals. There's been quite a lot of work done related to the regional seas, and in the Northwest Action Plan and the coordinating body of the seas of East Asia, there's been work to strengthen these intergovernmental mechanisms. There's been work on green fins, an approach used by over 500 diving and snorkeling operators, and some work on climate model projections for coral bleaching conditions provided under Environment Live. Next. On governance, there's been focus in providing support to national regulatory frameworks, providing support to judges and green benches, but there's also been significant support if we look at safeguarding wildlife species and habitats. We launched a Wild for Life campaign as we recognize that wildlife crime is a serious crime in our region and a threat to our shared sustainable development. Some of the work, especially under wildlife crime, we held the Africa-Asia Pacific Symposium on strengthening legal frameworks to combat wildlife crime. And these continuing national level support and some of the work that is being done at the national level is in Solomon Islands and Vietnam. Next. On chemicals and waste, I think a significant achievement is the entry into force of the Minamata Convention on Mercury, which entered into force on 16th August. There's been strengthened partnerships on air quality, environment and health, on sand and dust storms through various initiatives. There's also been a lot of work done with countries on lead paint, a lot of work done on Montreal Protocol, and if we talk about the 14 Pacific Islands, they reported that 56% of hydrochlorofluorocarbons reduction from the baseline, and going well beyond the 10% phase-out obligation of the Montreal Protocol. We have 3 Pacific countries have also ratified the Kigali Amendment. There is also work going with the Air Quality Thematic Group of the Asia-Pacific Forum on Environment and Health. This was led by the Republic of Korea. And there's been significant work done with Climate and Clean Air Coalition on short-lived climate pollutants, Bangladesh, Cambodia, Japan, Laos, Maldives, Mongolia, Philippines, and the Republic of Korea. Next. On resource efficiency, the focus has been to support policy development, create an enabling environment for sustainable consumption and production. There's been a lot of work done on awareness raising, education for reducing food waste. There's been a lot of capacity building work on sustainable consumption and production, and we have numbers that over 1,200 staff from different ministries in many countries, along 200 trained staffs are now sustainable consumption production experts. A lot of public-private dialogues have been held, and 19 countries have worked with us on assessments, indicators, and joint activities with regional networks. Next. On environment under review, the focus has been on undertaking science policy assessment to help inform policy development, improving access to environmental data and information. Some of the highlights are the Global Environmental Outlook 6 Asia-Pacific Assessment, capacity building for environmental reporting, and we've contributed to the Emission Gap Report, to the Eco-Restoration and Wealth Creation Report, Sustainable Development Goal Indicator Development, and some of the global assessment work. Next. Progress on the Samoa pathway. The actions have been joint implementations through the Pacific Roadmap for the Sustainable Development Goals and the Samoa pathway. Our UN Environment Program has strengthened the Pacific office. We've also started to focus on Pacific partnerships, the Cleaner Pacific Partnership, Pacific Ocean Alliance, Pacific Conservation Roundtable. We've also been working with different governments on environmental policies and plans incorporating sustainable development goals on databases and integrating sustainable development goals into national sustainable development strategies, and here primarily Samoa and Fiji. Next. So if you look at regional priorities, implementation gaps, and way forward, and this is what we have from the first Forum of Ministers of Environment and some of the assessment work undertaken by our office. We've been asked to address climate change and to build resilience. We've been told to decouple resource use from economic growth, to decarbonize economy, to continue to protect natural capital, ecosystem integrity, including wildlife, biodiversity, and oceans. We've been asked to look at integrated approaches to environment and health, to look at air quality and environmental health risks. We've been told to manage chemicals and waste, scale up environment action through sustainable development goals, strengthen environmental cooperation, governance, and institutions, and to strengthen the scientific basis of policy making and knowledge sharing. Next. The Executive Director's report towards a pollution-free planet identify different gaps in implementation. Some of the gaps he looked at was the level of resources available, the inadequate, often administrative, financial, institutional, technical capacities, absence of interministerial coordination, often in national governments, and sometimes not the level of political will that would be needed for changes. When we look at enablers, we've looked at balance between evidence-based decision-making and precautionary approaches, the need for strengthened environmental governance, the need for economic instruments and the right incentives, education for change, cooperation and partnership. So, Honorable Delegates, a key question, I think, for agenda item 7, if I can humbly suggest, would be to see how can we in Asia-Pacific further strengthen implementation of resolutions in the region, what other mechanisms can be explored. And also, if honorable delegates will look and see whether the priorities reflected in the resolutions are reflective of the important issues facing our region, or are they new priorities? And how can we in Asia-Pacific move forward in responding to existing priorities, considering the existing resolutions, leading up to the 3rd session of the UN Environment Assembly and the next Forum of Ministers and Environment Authorities of Asia-Pacific? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Dr. Serene, for that comprehensive and detailed update. And we'll keep that at the back of our minds when we go through the course of this forum. You have given the delegates some key questions to consider in the course of this forum. And as I said, we'll remember that as we progress further. I would now like to open the floor for country statement, and would like to make some announcement as to how that will be conducted. Due to the time constraint, we will manage the time for country statements and hopefully limit the time to 3 minutes per presentation from the country. I would also like to ask that you hand over a hard copy of your presentation to the Secretariat, and rest assured that your report or statement will form part of our meeting report. So if you don't get the opportunities to speak, please hand in a hard copy of your statement so that we can include it in our report. Let me assure you that there are also other opportunities through the course of today when we again open the floor for a country statement. So at 11 o'clock, I intend to stop and move on to agenda item 8. So if you haven't got the opportunity to speak by then, wait for the next lot. Ladies and gentlemen, we will proceed by inviting head of delegation to speak first, and then we give an opportunity to our international organizations, civil society organizations, and other stakeholders towards the end. May I now invite...
registered one. This one registered, and Japan registered first, Thailand first.
There were forms being sent out to be completed if you wanted to speak, and at this moment I have Thailand, who has completed and offered to take the floor, and rightly so, as your host for this meeting. Thailand.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thailand welcomed the launch of a global campaign against marine litter by the UN Environment early this year in Bali. The campaign called on all sectors, including government, industry, and consumer, to reduce plastic debris, especially microplastic. In addition, the project under the UN resolution, Ocean and Sea, and Sustainable Coral Reef Management has been developed well. Moreover, at the Ocean Conference held in New York last June, all stakeholders were encouraged to register their voluntary commitment to implement SDG 14. Our minister attended to the conference and announced our voluntary commitment to SDG 14 to combat marine litter, especially from land-based activity. Thailand has established the 20 years pollution management strategy, including 5-year management plan. Furthermore, Thailand will launch a plastic DB management plan comprising several approaches, such as develop fiscal and financial tools, promoting eco-packaging design and eco-friendly substitutes, developing a material flow of plastic container, implementing 3R's strategy, and promoting education. Moreover, our immediate action include coastal cleanup campaign for all coastal provinces and development of plastic waste reduction measure for all relevant stakeholders. While regard to sustainable consumption and production, we have been involved in the process of developing Asia-Pacific roadmap on SCP, and we also develop our own SCP roadmap. Through 10 YFP, we implement the Think, Eat, Save project initiated by UN Environment to reduce food waste with engagement of government, private sector, and NGOs. We recognize that science policy interface enhance our efforts in addressing pollution problem. Thailand provides inputs in development of GEO6 regional assessment for Asia and the Pacific. We also co-hosted the second draft of GEO6 at a meeting on May this year. Last but not least, Thailand is going to host the conference on reducing marine debris in ASEAN region to be held in November 2017 in Phuket. All ASEAN countries and dialogue partner will be invited. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Thailand, and thank you also for keeping to the time. We have our next speakers, and they will be in the following order: Japan, India, Indonesia, Iran, Singapore, Sri Lanka. If hopefully you have complete the form where the chair and the secretariat will know that you would like to speak. So can I have Japan? Japan?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Japan appreciates the Secretary's efforts in making this report for Agenda Item 7 and in following up the United Nations Environment Assembly resolutions. On the other hand, we would be appreciated if the Secretariat could make sure that the report has no mistake in terms of names and spelling by going over the documents since the report is submitted to the official meeting, including this one. For example, although the report used the word UN Environment, the word UNEP instead of the word UN Environment should be used throughout the report, as the word UNEP has been used in the official document so far. Also, while Japan appreciates the work undertaken by the UNEP in terms of science policy interface and strengthen scientific basis of policy making and knowledge sharing, it is important that relevant organizations work together and their roles are clarified without duplications. For example, IPBES, the Intergovernmental Science Policy Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Service, has been established as a platform for scientific evaluation and information sharing on mainly biodiversity issues for decision makers in the field. Therefore, there should be no duplication between their work and the work by the UNEP. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Japan. Let me invite India.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning to everybody. Let me at the outset congratulate you, Mr. Chair, being elected for this session. I take this opportunity to also congratulate the UNEP for providing an insight into the agenda number 7 and quite deliberately talked about the priorities which have been set right from the supporting Paris Agreement, the sustainable consumption and production, promoting air quality, and vis-a-vis the environmental health issues as well. Mr. Chair, we have been, as a group in Asia Pacific, have been trying our best to, come to a common goal to address the various environmental issues, right from the pollution, sustainable consumption, production, the climate change. UNEP has done a marvelous job in, initiating and compiling all these data and put up in a report form, which will give us a long way to deliberate among the countries here. Mr. Chair, you would agree, like many countries, particularly India, we have developed so much of rules and regulations with the waste management, chemicals, waste, air pollution, and we have also have many milestones to go ahead. So therefore, in my opinion, while I acknowledge the UNEP's good work in this area, the compliance is the key. I think we have been made targets, but the compliance has been a far-reaching consequences. So therefore, in my opinion, perhaps the compliance could be one of the key issues which UNEP can further guide and advise all the member states in the countries, in the region. And therefore, as I said earlier, we have a lot of issues like production, consumption, and waste management. Perhaps we need to do the volunteer approach, which need to be promoted along with the production and disposal. So therefore, Mr. Chair, while I again congratulate and laud the efforts of UNEP to address issues related to pollution-free planet, we are also committed to preventing, mitigating, and managing pollution in every form. In doing so, we would like to also see the development, collation, and use of reliable scientific data, use of multidisciplinary indicators, more efficient data gathering and monitoring, easier access to and wider availability of information, and an increase in awareness raising, which I have been saying since morning, and as well as many other delegates have been saying. So the awareness, compliance, and the voluntary approach, and the the consumer appreciation, consumer acceptance to be made should be promoted, and it should promote the evidence-based decision making in public and private sectors, effective standard setting by all stakeholders, and as I said earlier, and at cost of reputation, the greater participation by citizens from all walks of life. Once again, Mr. Chair, let me also congratulate you as well as UNEP for these efforts, and we look forward for more guidance and participation as a matter of fact. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, India. Can I invite our colleagues from Indonesia?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And let me again congratulate you as the chair of this important meeting. Indonesia view UNEA as a pertinent forum to address the global environmental affairs. Let me recall that during our deliberation of the UNEA too, wide-ranging issues related to the environment came to our attention, such as chemicals and waste, marine plastic debris and microplastic, sustainable coral reef management, climate change, sustainable consumption and production, as well as illegal trade and wildlife. Following the UNEA resolution, Indonesia has implemented numbers of relevant resolutions into its national and subnational agenda. Let me share with you the affirmative action has been taken to implement the resolution. With regard to the marine plastic litter, as well as agenda on oceans and sea, Indonesia has been doing its very best in addressing very timely the pertinent issue of trash, debris, and waste management. The government is working together with 25 city mayors and head of district throughout the country, where the city lies at the waterfronts, pose its scenic beauty and importance as a touristic destination throughout the country, with target of reduce 70% of plastic waste in 2025. Some initiatives in progress as well as relevant policy regarding our subject matter. We have done trial operation in pay for plastic bag policy during the year of 2016. Besides developing National Action Plan on tackling marine debris, a concrete move driven by CSO and supported by local government, private sector, and community through a newly established alliance on zero waste for marine debris. We introduced Less Plastic, More Fantastic movement. During its first trial in May 2016, we could observe reduction between 30 to 75% of plastic bags used in convenience stores. We also support the initiative from the communities for establishing the trash bank or bank sampah in Indonesia to reduce waste and install waste trap facilities in some rivers to prevent waste flows to the sea. In February this year, Indonesia is collaborating with the UN Environment, hosted the launch of the United Nations Global Campaign on the Clean Seas. We know that awareness and attitude play an important role for its success. The society consumption pattern, lifestyle, and producer responsibility will determine how far we could achieve the targets. The government is facilitating all action necessary to meet the target, but moreover, direct involvement and participation of the communities and grassroots organizations, NGOs alike, as well as private sector are also instrumental in making our land and ocean safe and livable for many generations to come. As a country with mega biodiversity, both terrestrial and aquatic, Indonesia is urgently addressing biodiversity conservation in the context of illegal trade and wildlife product. Various efforts have been taken at all levels, which include action to restore and protect the population from further damage. However, effort to curb the illegal trade of wildlife cannot be done only by one country. It is essential to have collaboration among origin, transit, and consumer countries or destination countries to tackle the illegal trafficking of endangered and wildlife species. Climate change and implementation of Paris Agreement is also one of the important national agenda. Indonesia is shifting its business as usual development into the low carbon strategy by setting national targets. In 2016, through nationally determined contribution, we have set an ambitious target of 29% greenhouse gases emission reduction by 2030. In order to make this shift into a low carbon growth for Indonesia, a long vision and comprehensive strategy are critical. It is not only aims to strengthen the response to the threat of climate change, but also to strengthen our pathway towards sustainable development, as well as to eradicate poverty. As part of Sustainable Development Goals, issue of implementation of sustainable consumption and production and sound management of chemical has been addressing through various initiatives. To strengthen our effort in tackling mercury, Indonesia is in the process to ratify the Minamata Convention and carrying out projects in related to sound management of artisanal small gold mining by introducing mercury-free technology. Mr. Chair, sustainable coral reef is one of the essential resolutions for an archipelagic country like Indonesia. Indonesia and UN Environment jointly organized a consultation meeting on implementation of the resolution on sustainable coral reef management back in June 2016 and were attended by 40 countries. The meeting successfully providing further guidance in implementation of the resolution. With regard to biodiversity and ecosystem management, Indonesia continues to strengthen and have in place an effective legal and regulatory framework, policy, and practice that deliver economic and social benefit and include effective safeguards that reduce social and environmental impact as well as to conserve biodiversity and ecosystem. We also would like to recognize that traditional knowledge, innovation, and practices of local communities make an important contribution to the conservation and sustainable use of natural resources, and their wider application can build resilience and support social well-being and sustainable livelihood. In ending my intervention, my delegation is looking forward to having a concrete and workable agenda for further implementation of the UNIA resolution in this region. That is what people are waiting for after such long discussion. We must preserve the momentum and immediately work together for healthy environment and healthy people of Asia and the Pacific region. I thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Indonesia. I now invite our colleagues from Iran.
Thank you very much, Chair. Let me echo voices congratulating you on your election as the chair of this senior officials meeting. I'd like to start with appreciating the effort put in by the Regional United Nations Environment Program Representative Office in Bangkok that I thoroughly went through and examined the progresses made as far as the implementation of the UNIA 2 resolutions are concerned, and I really like to highlight and commend the Secretariat and the Regional Office for their efforts. However, I'd like to add on to what was presented slightly and share some of my thoughts with the forum since it was requested for further thoughts and remarks as to how we could strengthen the implementation of the United Nations Environment Assembly resolution. We all very much appreciate that the sole mandate of UN Environment, newly known as, or formerly known as UNEP, United Nations Environment Program, is keeping the environment under review, and its flagship product is the Global Environment Outlook, the GEO6, which is now under preparation and has long been under preparation for the last 3 or 4 years. Thus, I'd like to, particularly for our region, propose that we keep the environment under monitoring as well. This is critically important that we provide the very credible data so that we could base our future engagement and practical steps on reliable data. Thus, having monitored the environment in our region, Asian Pacific, we'd be in a position to better identify any newly emerging challenge, environmental challenges in particular, and with coupled with forward-looking approach, through a different means, we can somehow be in a position not to only respond to the existing challenges and somehow be predictive in our efforts and then ensure that such environmental predicaments do not take the form that we'd have to face and combat them as they might exist in future. And thus, I may propose at this stage that potentially a small scientific panel as a think tank with a full sub-regional participation and representation could serve that purpose. Mr. Chair, one of the resolutions that was endorsed and adopted in UNIA 2 was the sand and dust storm, which unfortunately is a rapidly growing multidimensional sustainable development challenge in our region. It is now no longer a local or regional issue. It has certainly got its international dimensions from Australia, from Far East Asia, West of Asia, Africa, Europe, even as far as Northern America. This is why the initiative and the resolution that was taken up by our region, and of course initiated by Islamic Republic of Iran, has been given its appropriate dimension of the need to be better addressed globally. We all very much appreciate that the issue of SDS as a challenge is a result of climate change, entangled with water resource management or mismanagement, as it were, as well as the land degradation. In line with this United Nations Environment Assembly 2 resolution, the Sun and Dust Storm, and as well as the United Nations General Assembly 71 resolution, Iran was requested to hold an international event jointly with the UN-wide system that did so, and the International Conference on Combating Dust and Sandstorm, Challenges and Practical Solutions was held back in July, 2nd to 5th of July, and it really resulted very well with very good turnout of the ministers of the countries affected or in which the hotspots exist, resulted as it was presented in the formulation of Tehran Ministerial Declaration, as well as the technical recommendations calling upon the United Nations General Assembly, as well as the United Nations Environment Assembly, the third session of UNIA 3, to give it further consideration as the necessity of formulating regional plans of actions adding up to the capacities of the countries inflicted, because in essence, the SDS is a transboundary environmental multidimensional issue that requires adequate attention, and the attention is to the extent that I was just informed last week that it has been taken up by the forthcoming United Nations General Assembly, and a dedicated session alongside the forthcoming high-level political forum in 2018, in July next year, is going to further scrutinize the means and the necessities of how we could ensure that this broadly expanding environmental challenge does not really broaden its scope beyond what it really is at the moment. We all very much appreciate that issues of global warming are really pushing for a different set of environmental challenges that I imagine particularly our vulnerable region is not in a position to afford to continue to do so. In line with the request put forward by the representative of UN Environment Office in Bangkok, I came across the views that I shared with you, and I hope that they could appropriately be taken up in the report of the meeting. And Iran and my delegation stand very much in support of the United Nations Environment Office in Bangkok as the key player in all such efforts, collective efforts in the region. And I thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Iran. We are looking for a speaker that will bring us back to schedule. And I'm looking at Singapore to do that for us. Singapore?
Thank you, Chair, and I'll try my best, Mr. Chair. That's what you requested. First of all, let me just say that since Singapore is first taking the floor, express our position to the government of Thailand, and as well as the UN Environment Office in Bangkok for hosting and convening this forum. Also, we want to congratulate you, Chair, for taking up this mantle of steering our forum. This is an important forum for the region in the sense that we want to prepare ourselves for the third session of UN Environment Assembly scheduled at the end of the year. Generally, Singapore is pleased with the work done so far in the implementation of the UNIA 2 as well as UNIA 1 resolutions in the Asia-Pacific region. Specifically, we are happy that UN Environment and its partners have focused to consolidate regional effort to improve air quality through the Asia-Pacific Clean Air Partnership, now enjoying 16 member countries. We are also supportive of the efforts in convening the Asia-Pacific Forum on Environment and Health, which reaffirms the collective will of this region to promote integrated approaches to address the nexus between health and the environment, in particular the priorities and address issues such as air quality. With regards to resolutions on marine pollution, Singapore is supportive of the ongoing work by the COPC, the coordinating body of the seas of East Asia, to bring together its members to finalize the new strategic direction, whose focus includes addressing marine and coastal pollution, with an emphasis on land-based pollution sources. A few delegations just now spoke about GEO-6. Thailand and Iran spoke about GEO-6. In this regard, Singapore is also of the view that we can draw references from the 6th Global Environment Outlook with regards to the regional assessment for Asia and the Pacific. We think that this publication, which is prepared for the first time specifically for the Asia-Pacific region, provides a credible source of information for policy and planning in the region. Some of the key areas highlighted in this region that this region can do more is to respond to environmental health risks associated with pollution, as well as to strengthen scientific basis of policy making and knowledge sharing. In addition, Mr. Chair, we think that there is scope for the UN Environment Office in Bangkok to do more with regard to working with relevant partners to promote sustainable financing. This is key in contributing to efforts in achieving sustainable consumption and production. And sustainable financing is also an area that is championed by the UN Environment Executive Director himself. Lastly, Singapore is of the view that the UN Environment Office in Bangkok can also do more in promoting partnerships and cooperation in addressing transboundary pollution, particularly in the light of the theme of Unit 3 towards a pollution-free planet. While pollution is generated at a specific location, it might not remain there. It can be carried by anthropogenic means, such as cargo shipments, as well as natural means, such as air and water. Marine plastic debris is one area that we have in mind. As such, pollution originating from one area may affect the environment of other areas, including other countries. When this happens, it is imperative that there is close coordination and cooperation between the source and destination of pollution. Cooperation among countries is therefore key to tackling environmental issues in a holistic manner. We'll be covering more of this issue, Mr. Chair, in the coming agenda items. With that, I thank you.
Thank you, our colleague from Singapore. I suggest we go to one more speaker for our country statement, and that would be Sri Lanka. And then I suggest that we give one opportunity to our civil society, and Bangladesh will start the next time when we open the floor. So Sri Lanka, can you conclude the country papers before NGOs?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would also like to take this opportunity to congratulate you for electing to chair this important session. The Excellencies, distinguished delegates, and ladies and gentlemen, following UNIA resolutions, the government of Sri Lanka has launched many progressive initiatives. Being an island in the Indian Ocean as a middle-income country, we realize the importance of resource efficiency in achieving sustainable development. Sri Lanka. Accordingly, Switch Asia Sustainable Consumption and Production National Policy Support Component for Sri Lanka project under 10-year framework of UNEP commenced in mid-January 2015 as a technical assistance program to support strengthening the overall government policies and institutional framework for implementation of SCP practices, as well as strengthen the role of national focal point for the implementation of 10-year framework. Sri Lanka has also benefited from Switch Asia funding with projects addressing initiatives at the enterprise level in the sectors of food and beverages, tourism and export-oriented industries, which benefited over 500 SMEs directly by way of optimized resource utilization, efficient use of energy and water, and minimizing waste generation. However, these projects, similar to other projects targeting SMEs in the region, identified at the final stage, there is a need to strengthen the overall SAP policies and institutional framework in the country to enhance the uptake of such green and sustainable consumption and production practices by wider spectrum of SMEs. Initial steps in this regard were undertaken in Sri Lanka as a result of launching a voluntary green reporting system and with enhanced dialogue with stakeholders on green public procurement policies. This national policy support component supports the Sri Lankan government in selecting, adopting, and implementing suitable economic and regulatory policy instruments to promote sustainable consumption and production, thereby enhancing the long-term sustainability by way of conserving natural resources, promoting shift in consumption, reducing waste,
applying life cycle thinking and guard against rebounding effect. The present ambitious development drive in Sri Lanka is rapidly encroaching on the traditional Sri Lankan lifestyles in both urban and rural areas. While urbanization is spreading along the unsustainable SCP patterns, the aspiration of the market-based economic systems are changing the consumption and production behavior of all citizens. The project will support an increase in sustainable, eco and resource efficient cleaner production and the demand for cleaner, green and environmentally friendly sustainable products, goods and services. This is particularly important for middle income countries such as Sri Lanka, where the opportunities for greener economic growth are numerous and national consumption is on rise. Further, I would like to mention some highlighting events as national sustainable consumption and production policy and organizational setup are strengthened. Also, sustainable production framework is strengthened and SAP principles applied in selecting sectors. Sustainable consumption framework is strengthened and sustainable procurement policy, especially eco-labeling. Knowledge on SCP is enhanced and awareness is raised among public as well as private sectors and civil society. Apart from the above, standardization of the policy formulation process in Sri Lanka has almost completed, whereas formulation of national SCP policy and draft SCP institutional coordination mechanism are progressing well. The draft national SCP policy will have to go through the steps of the policy formulation protocol already developed by and accepted by the Department of National Planning of Sri Lanka. It is necessary to develop a national level strategy and action plan for the implementation of the improved draft national SCP policy. Based on the national level strategy and action plan, each sector will have to develop its own SCP operational action plans. Further, a baseline survey on tea, rice and dairy processing sectors has been done and SCP action plan have developed accordingly. The most importantly, the sustainable public procurement policy has developed and strategies and action plans are yet to be delivered. While ensuring the awareness and capacity building on SCPs, the introduction of SCP to the Sri Lankan education system, including universities, is a remarkable achievement. Finally, I would like to reiterate that the sustainable consumption and production is a holistic approach to minimize the negative environmental impact from consumption and production systems while promoting quality of life for all. Finally, I would like to request that the Sri Lanka has already ratified the Minamata Convention as the 60th country and kindly request UNEP assistance to implement the strategic chemical management system in Sri Lanka. Thank you.
Thank you, Sri Lanka. I think with that we should conclude our country statements. Bangladesh will start the country statement when we open the floor once again. But let's conclude this session by inviting a representative from our NGOs, and I invite Center for Sustainable Development and Environment. Mogani, are you here?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am Hania Moghania speaking on behalf of the Center for Sustainable Development and Environment, CENESTA, the farmers' constituency of the Asia-Pacific Regional CSO Engagement Mechanism and the CSO Forum. We would like to take this opportunity to welcome the efforts of the ministerial session in bringing out the specific concerns in the region. However, we also express our concerns on the restricted engagement and participation opportunities for the civil society. We would like to draw your attention toward the problem of water scarcity and water pollution that are posing a grave threat to the region's population. Land and soil are getting increasingly polluted due to chemical leaching from industrial sources. Extractive industries' use of fertilizer and pesticides and improper waste management. All of these result not only in innumerable suffering and forced displacement of farmer workers, women and children, but also threaten to negatively impact future generations. These issues demand severe attention in terms of efficient management, regulation of business, social and environmental integrity. For address all of these key development concerns and fulfillment of the resolutions of UNEA 2, we ask the governments to promote people-led sustainable scientific practices, traditional knowledge, and evidence-based solutions, including agroecology, to the problems of pollution, and to veer away from technological fixes that do not address the root causes of the problem and bring adverse consequences to the environment and livelihoods, including fertilizers, agrochemicals, GM technology, gene editing, synthetic biology organisms, and etc. We urge the governments to be mindful of the unsustainable market-driven technological fixes, and would like to reiterate that smallholder farmers, especially women farmers, need to be at the center of any agricultural technological advancement, given their contribution in the sector. We strongly advocate for the recognition of local communities' role in management and conservation of natural capital, and call for realigning policies and natural development priorities according to people's realities and experiences to ensure that no one is left behind and for true realization of Agenda 2030. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for that speech. I suggest we conclude this session and move on to the next session. But before I do that, I would like to acknowledge and appreciate all the country reports that have just been tabled. We have managed to invite 7 countries and 1 NGO to speak in this in the last session. So next time we open the floor for more presentation, we hopefully can improve on that number. Once again, I ask that your hard copies of your presentation be presented to us, to Secretariat, and we'll compile the report of this meeting with your report included in our report. So I thank you once again, ladies and gentlemen, and for those countries that have presented, and our 1 NGO. We can move now to agenda item 8, is regional input to outcomes of the 3rd session of the United Nations Environment Assembly. Thank you. And to start us on that agenda item, I would like to call upon Ms. Isabel Luis, who is the Deputy Regional Director for UN Environment Asia and the Pacific Office, to present the theme of the 3rd session of the United Nations Environment Assembly, and that theme is towards a pollution-free planet, as contained in UNEP APENV Forum Bracket 2/2. Ladies and gentlemen, Ms. Luis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Honorable delegates, ladies and gentlemen. Allow me to share with you a presentation on the preparation towards a pollution-free planet, the theme of the 2017 session of the United Nations Environment Assembly. Next. As we have all been discussing, it has been an urgent issue on why we need to address pollution. Pollution is threatening the health, development, and equity, and it's not just a global issue, but it's mostly significant in this part of the world. In our region, it's having an impact on human health and ecosystems, which is pervasive and getting widespread. Some pollutants are particularly persistent once they end up in the environment. From another perspective, transitioning to a pollution-free world can also foster healthy competition for innovations in the economy and can create new job opportunities while enhancing knowledge and productivity. Next. The ongoing discussions and consultations and inputs leading up to the discussion at the UNEA Assembly in December are showing there's a large potential for benefits from tackling pollution now, but we also need to address the gaps. Gaps particularly focusing on implementation, knowledge, infrastructure, leadership, the mispricing and invisibility of ecosystem values and externalization of pollution costs, and the insufficient recognition that producer and consumer choices have pollution consequences. Next. We also know that there are many opportunities to act. To address pollution helps us implement collectively many other global and regional commitments. Let me take two as an example. The Sustainable Development Goals, the indicators, the voluntary commitment to implementation lead to many aspects for a cleaner environment, improving health, well-being, worker productivity, enabling quality education, ensuring the provision of safe food and water, maintaining healthy ecosystems and protecting habitats, and enabling gender equality. Many ongoing multilateral agreements, in particular one emerging important one, the Minamata Convention on Mercury, that less than a month ago entered into force, with 10 Asia-Pacific countries now party to the convention, and which will be discussed at the first conference of parties later this month. Next. Also emerging through the deliberations, honorable delegates, are three elements that could be a framework for actions. One is based on the principles of universality, precautionary, inclusiveness, sustainability, and integrative. Many of these, of course, are familiar to us through the SDGs and also on the basis of the Rio+10 outcomes. A second element is a two-pronged approach, looking at targeted interventions based on risk assessments and scientific evidence on the impacts of hard-hitting pollutants, polluted areas, and cross-cutting pollution, whilst looking at system-wide transformations for shifting the economy to more innovative and cleaner production and consumption patterns, and greener investments in less polluting activities and practices, as well as alternatives. And the third element involving enablers to address the gaps, harness market and policy opportunities so as to advance action on pollution. Next. So the UN Environment Assembly, from the 4th to the 6th of December in Nairobi this year, as you know, is the highest level decision-making body on the environment, and the third assembly will focus on towards a pollution-free planet. The expected outcomes will be a powerful joint message outlining realistic steps to address pollution to protect human health, describing developmental aspirations, and extolling the value of the environment and natural resources. Next. Already underway and where we are today is part of a journey and a roadmap towards the third session. May I just take you through some of the key timelines along the way? In 2 weeks' time, on September 22nd, that will be the second deadline for member states to submit the final draft resolutions to the Secretariat. October will see the 140th meeting of the Committee of Permanent Representatives to send draft resolutions to the third meeting of the open-ended CPR. And the last week of November, leading up to the main assembly, will convene various stakeholders and agendas for discussion. These will include the Global Major Groups and Stakeholders Forum with Civil Society at the end of November, the third open-ended Committee of Permanent Representatives, and a variety of side events and initiatives involving very much stakeholders like the private sector around the Science Policy Forum and the Sustainable Innovation Expo. And finally, the Executive Director's report will be presented at the Assembly towards a pollution-free planet. Next. However, there are many ways that you can contribute, and there's already active movement, for example, to join virtual ways of initiating initiatives to commitment and to pledges to combat pollution. #BeatPollution, Citizens are already committing over 180 pledges through actions, signing the Clean Planet Pledge, and submitting pollution stories. So we encourage governments, businesses, and civil society to continue registering your voluntary commitments to this whole move on mobilizing action to beat pollution. Next. So as we progress on our journey towards the Assembly, we also propose and suggest some thoughts for further consideration and welcome your input throughout this process. Are the identified gaps reflective of the region's needs? How can we better implement practical policies and practice in the Asia-Pacific region? What are the mechanisms to ensure these are responsive to the local context? And how can we engage financial institutions and private sector in this region to invest in transformative technologies? Next. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, Ms. Louise, for your comprehensive presentation and presenting to us the theme of the conference. I will now open the floor once again and remind delegates that to keep to the time, 3 minutes. The hard copies will be here and we will form part of our report and it perhaps make more impact in our report than when you actually read it out. So I suggest you, if you have a brief summary, do the summary and leave the detail to be included in the report. And UN will read the report. So I once again open the floor for country papers and I would like to invite my colleague from Bangladesh to start. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, colleagues and distinguished delegates. At the outset, let me join others congratulating you as Chair for the election, and at the same time, I also sincerely appreciate the previous sessions presenters from the UN Environment for their wonderful job in providing meaningful support to the countries in Asia and Pacific. In fact, I am the overflow speaker, so I would like to touch upon the previous session's subject matter that I would like to share some views in this forum. In fact, we understand that the resolution of UN Environment Assembly captured a wide range of issues across many thematic areas like Paris Agreement, ecosystem-based adaptation, sustainable consumption and production, promoting air quality, managing plastic waste, protecting ocean and seas, and so on and so forth. And my delegation feels that in this broad range of activities are being undertaken, we need to establish, strengthen the existing international and regional collaborative initiatives that we have been experiencing over the last few years. So we need to strengthen them with sustainable resources. And we understand that with regard to some specific resolution, for instance, to implement the Paris Agreement, we feel that there are activities already have started at a national and regional level. So we need to provide some support, specific support to the countries so that they can start implementing the Paris Agreement in a timely fashion. And we understand that the parties have put forward their NDCs, nationally determined contributions. Now they are trying to develop the NDC implementation roadmap. So we would urge the UN Environment and the other regional partners to provide specific support to the countries for developing this implementation roadmap for an NDC. And with regard to the other resolutions that we see adopted by the UN Environment Assembly, and we also feel the necessity of having the meaningful implementation of the strategies, policies already developed by the countries. With regard to the UN conventions, there are 3-4 conventions very much related to this resolution, so we need to have some specific support, and, technical and financial support for implementing those policies and strategies. At the same time, as we heard from the previous speakers, that there have been some initiatives already launched in this process, and we need to have some collaborative initiatives, and we need to strengthen these partnerships and the regional platforms so that they can facilitate the implementation of these new initiatives or some initiatives already being undertaken over the last few years. And specifically for my country, we are trying to manage the waste, especially the plastic waste, seriously. So we feel that the countries who are actually leading this sector in managing this plastic waste in an environment-friendly way, we need to have some collaboration between these among our countries, and we need to have some approaches like South-South, North-South, and triangle cooperation with these particular issues, managing waste and managing plastic waste for coastal, for marine, as well as land-based problems. And we also feel that some issues like that the resolutions has already pointed out that with regard to the achieving the sustainable development goals, we feel that the countries have started prioritizing the actions to actually to achieve the sustainable development goals, and they are developing the roadmap and sector-specific action plan how to achieve these SDGs in a coherent and synergistic manner. So I feel that the UNEP and the other bodies can provide the technical support on developing this roadmap to implement the SDGs and to achieve the SDGs in a timely fashion. So thank you, Chair, and thank you, distinguished colleagues.
Thank you very much, Tancredis. Can we have Vanuatu and then Cook Island and then China? And may I remind you once again, as other countries would like to have the second chance to speak. So I'm giving the countries that haven't spoken already the opportunity to speak first. And if we have time towards the end, then we'll give you that second chance to speak. Please, to the time, please. Vanuatu, Cook Island, and then China. Vanuatu.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As I'm taking the floor for the first time, I would like to congratulate you on your appointment as chairperson for the second Forum of Ministers and Environment Authorities of Asia Pacific. Mr. Chair, we are living in a small island countries, particularly the Pacific Island countries that continues to experience challenges in terms of sustainability of the island environment. We acknowledge that working in partnership as a region and also at the sub-regional level is a vital approach in a sense that we are living in the same and connected environment, and the challenges faced needs to be addressed together. Having said that, to achieve the goals of sustainable environment, we need to address these issues and the problems on the environment at a national level. Mr. Chair, it is important that countries at the sub-regional level increase their partnership to work together to tackle problems, especially with waste management initiatives, and share lessons learned and experiences at the sub-regional level, and would like to see the support in this regard continues. Vanuatu in particular have taken huge steps through the initiative of the current ruling government in initiating waste management programs and strategies, and was announced by our Honorable Prime Minister during our 37th independence anniversary this year, announcing the banning of plastic bags, which the current government is committed to see it come into reality. The government has also endorsed this year the National Waste Management Strategy and Pollution Control and Implementation Plan 2016 to 2020 as a strategy to achieve sustainable environment through good waste management. Again, such initiatives are initiated through government's partnership with private sectors and civil society organizations. Mr. Chair, as the theme of the UNEA is towards a pollution-free planet, taking such small steps at the national level will contribute to the global sustainable development goals and vision. And I would like to see the support in terms of technical and financial to continue and increase, especially in the area of waste management, international and the cooperation to continue into the future. With this, I thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Tomas Vanuatu. Can I have the floor to my colleagues from Cook Islands?
Thank you, Chair. Kia ora to all delegations. As a neighbor in the Pacific Ocean, Chair, I wish to congratulate you on being elected as the chairman of this meeting. With regards to item 8, agenda item 8, the theme of Union 3, I would like to make some remarks regarding SDG 14 to conserve and sustainably use the ocean, seas, and marine resources for sustainable development in the 2030 Development Agenda and the Blue Economy. In March 2015, Sweden's Ambassador for Ocean, Seas and Freshwater estimated the annual value of ocean at 3 to 6 trillion, thus acknowledging the economic importance of ocean in comparison with other priorities and communication with investors. Chair, the first World Ocean Assessment released in December 2015 by the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea provides a scientific basis for consideration of ocean issues, including Sustainable Development Goal SDG 14. Chair, the Cook Islands derives more than 50% of its GDP from tourism, and our visitors are attracted by culture and our beautiful clear seas and green environment. However, tourism requires extra energy production, and in the Cook Islands has committed to solar energy and set the goal of relying 100% on renewable energy by 2020. We are pleased to tell you that we are well on track to achieve that goal. Chair, tourism also results in extra waste. In 2005, there was a strong El Nino cycle which resulted in higher lagoon water temperatures. This, together with coastal zone pollution by water waste, wastewater, detergents, and agricultural runoff, produced ugly algae bloom in our iconic Muri Lagoon. We instituted a water and sanitation project called Watsan to reduce this pollution by persuading household and holders and hotel property owners to adopt more responsible waste management practice. Regular monitoring of lagoon water quality has helped us recognize the impact of very heavy rainfall and where the hotspots are, so that we can be strategic about prevention. But we have some way to go, because in the summer of 2015 and 16, there was another strong El Nino cycle and the algae bloom. We currently have expert help from expert marine biologists to work out the next steps. Chair, in July 2017, the Cook Islands passed an act with a strong bipartisan support establishing the Cook Islands Marine Park, or we call it the Marae Moana, with a total ocean area of nearly 2 million square kilometers. The aim of the Marae Moana is to provide the necessary framework to promote sustainable development by balancing economic growth interests such as tourism, fishing, and deep-sea mining, with conserving core biodiversity and natural assets in the ocean, reefs, and islands. As noted by the keynote speaker yesterday, conservation has evolved from a non-welfare generating activity to one of the conservation generating tangible welfare and involving ecotourism activities such as diving, recreational game fishing, and whale watching. Chair, we offer these examples to show what a Pacific small island development state has been able to do in promoting the theme of UNEA 3 towards a pollution-free planet. Thank you.
Thank you, Ko Collins. Can we invite the representative from China?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to join our delegates speakers to congratulate you be elected as the chair. Good morning, delegates. I would like to share some of our speakers' opinion to express our appreciation for the Secretariat, I mean the Regional Office of Asia and the Pacific of UNEP, for their excellent job of preparing the opening of the meeting. I would like to take this opportunity to share some of things which related to the theme of our forum happened in China. My point is that the commitment side and the action side, our Secretariat has already pointed out some of the gaps in this region is the action side. So I would like to share some of the recent development in China, both in the commitment and actions. Our top-level commitment to the green development has been taken. The green development idea has been mainstreamed in the national economic and social development plan, both the next 5 years plan and the long-term, middle and long-term plan. State leadership has called on to shift to the green life, green living patterns. On the action side, China now is implementing the National Action Plan on water pollution prevention and control, and also a National Action Plan on air pollution control and prevention, and also additional one on soil prevention and implementing and control. This is what we call 3 walls against pollutions. And the central government has sent out thousands of staffs to the local area and to the business to make inspections to see that, to make sure that environmental laws has been complied. So this is the actions for the reduction of pollution recently happened in China. I will share it with you. My last point is that my delegation looks forward to fruit outcomes of the meeting, of the forum, and collaboration with all delegations. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, China. That lovely presentation. I would like to invite Nepal to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As this is my first time I'm taking the floor, let me first congratulate you to be elected as a chair in this election. Once again, distinguished delegates, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Nepal, being a party to various multilateral environmental agreements, has committed to comply with international legal instruments regarding pollution control. These international instruments have been recognized as the guiding principles of pollution controls laws, such as polluters pay, environmental integrity, justifiable compensation, and promotion of environmental justice, as well as a right to participate. Nepal have been formulating and implementing programs at national, provincial, and local levels in order to achieve the 2030 Agenda for the Sustainable Development. Different environment-related standards have been formulated for the sake of air pollution control and water pollution control. National Ambient Air Quality Standard, emission standards for industrial boilers, emission standard for brick kilns, emission standards for DG sets, Nepal vehicle mass emission standard are some major air quality related standards that we have gazetted to control air quality. In the last years, Nepal have promoted initiatives to tackle the negative impacts of chemicals on human health and environment. Hazardous substance management regulation has been drafted, taking into account the provisions of international conventions related to environmentally sound management of chemicals. Similarly, 74.51 metric tons of POPs pesticides, 54 metric tons of PCVs of PCV oils, and 155 metric tons of PCVs contaminated equipment have been managed in an environmentally sound manner during the last decade, and Nepal thus raised the major milestone set well before the target. Although being a small country without any mention-worthy contribution in global emissions, Nepal is a country at the receiving end of the climate change and global warming phenomena. The snow in our Himalaya is melting in a higher rate than before, and our glaciers are at higher risk of explosion. Besides, Nepal is also witnessing irregular rain patterns, natural disasters, and adverse impacts on agricultural yields. Despite the various initiatives and efforts taken for the sake of pollution control over the years, the country is struggling still to have a research on identifying the sources of pollutants and introduce mitigation measures to curtail it. Therefore, prioritizing the technical and capacity gaps seen in LDC's countries like Nepal, I would like to urge all the UN agencies, development partners, and state members to work hand in hand to create pollution-free planet. Thank you.
Thank you, Nepal. I think we have one more opportunity for a country paper before we give that last two opportunity to our NGOs. So I once again apologize if your country hasn't, your name hasn't come up, but I would like to invite the Republic of Korea to take the floor now.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would also like to join the previous speakers congratulating you on your election as chair. I would also like to thank the Secretariat for the concise and clear introduction of the items. My intervention is related to this item and the previous one that we have discussed. Out of all the activities that UNEP has taken in the region, my delegation would like to suggest that UNEP should continue its work in close cooperation and collaboration with ESCAP and other international intergovernmental bodies active in the region, similar to what we have asked the Executive Secretary of the ESCAP to support the member states in several areas. In the draft ministerial declaration that we have agreed yesterday. With respect to the theme of the UNEA, my delegation would like to echo the interventions made by some of the delegates before me. I would like to stress that UNEP should be more proactive in responding to the needs of the member states in the area of environmental health, especially in relation to air pollution, which is a serious environmental health issue in my country and elsewhere in the Asia-Pacific region. As we can see from the meeting document, air pollution, out of all the pollution categories presented in the document, takes the largest portion of the global cost of pollution. But my delegation believes that environmental health is the area that has not been fully explored and dealt with at the UNEP headquarters level. And I look forward to fruitful discussions and success of the UNEA in Nairobi. Mr. Chair, for your information, I'm also pleased to share with you and the delegates present here that the government of the Republic of Korea has initiated the process to ratify the Minamata Convention, and the government will be able to submit its instrument of ratification possibly sometime next year at the latest. Thank you.
Thank you, the rep from Republic of Korea. I would like now to invite a few civil society to speak, and once again, we'll open the floor for more presentation from the countries later on in the meeting. But let me invite the representative from, this name is long, bear with me here, Cecoedecon, Cecoedecon. Mrs. Chosny, are you around?
I am Vibhuti Joshi, speaking on behalf of Cecoedecon, India, and the Farmers' Constituency of the Asia-Pacific Regional CSO Engagement Mechanism. Mr. Chair, I thank you for this opportunity. We put our appreciation on record for UN ESCAP and UN Environment coming together to organize a CSO forum before this MCED7, and second, ministers and high-level officials of the environment meeting for Asia-Pacific Joint Conference, and having appropriate space for CSOs to deliver statements during the discussion on various agenda items. However, we strongly oppose the lack of space for CSOs on the official program, which is in contrast of the multi-stakeholder approach which Agenda 2030 puts on priority. Of fundamental importance for the pollution-free Asia-Pacific is the resource efficiency. As highlighted earlier, domestic material consumption and resource intensity has been rising in the region since 2000. Governments in the region need to put a renewed emphasis in arresting this trend. The energy efficiency gains are also likely to be reversed if we continue our over-reliance on fossil fuels in the region. The financial requirements of developing low-carbon, pollution-free, and sustainable development pathways must attract global partnerships in the spirit of the CBDR-RC. Secondly, the region is also characterized by increasing inequality amid prosperity, and even though the Gini coefficient has been reducing, the gap between the better off and worse off is widening. This has more to do with reduced public spending and increased privatization of basic services, poor regulation of PPPs, restricted access to land and water commons, and inadequate social protection floors, which affect all socially and economically marginalized groups. Majority of the countries in the region being developing countries with agrarian economies, we will urge the member states to show increased political will to support agriculture and small farmers and food producers, as investment in sustainable agriculture and small food producers is the best guarantee to ensure sustainable, inclusive, and equitable development. Thirdly, rapid urbanization in the region demands the cities are made more sustainable, not only from the infrastructure, energy, and material use point of view, but factors in social equality, as majority of the urban poor are in worse condition than rural poor and lack even essential services. Shrinking space for the CSOs, civic participation, and right to democratic dissent, which must be protected, as CSOs have much to contribute, not only in service delivery, but also as agents of accountability and essential link between the government and the community, including the communities which are on the peripheries of development. We also emphasize more rigorous assessment process on outcomes of UNEA resolutions, and note that proliferation of the platforms to discuss sustainable development and its various dimensions militates against the concept of one UN and limits its capacity to ensure regularity of these platforms, and results in decreased willingness and interest among the member states to participate and contribute to these discussions and their follow-ups. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you for your speech. One other NGO, may I invite the representative from the Island Sustainability Alliance. Ingram, are you around?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am from the Cook Islands, a neighbouring small island developing state. With regard to Agenda Item 8B, a pollution-free planet and wastes, in the Cook Islands we have added an extra R to the conventional 3 Rs. So for us the slogan reads, reduce, refuse, reuse and recycle. The addition of refuse recognises that government can lead by example with green procurement policies. Community consultations have been conducted in Cook Islands, so now there is a national policy for solid waste, including hazardous wastes. We now have an informal waste management platform made up of relevant government departments, civil society organisations and local importing businesses. This platform meets about every 3 months with the aim of sharing knowledge and suggesting better waste management practices. We advocate that our government, in particular the Education Department, is a big user of electronics and could lead by example by purchasing electronics only from suppliers with corporate responsibility programs, especially those which take full responsibility for the full life cycle of products by taking back electronics at end of life. It would significantly reduce the burden for hazardous waste disposal in an environmentally sound manner. In 2012, Cook Islands exported 12 containers of electronic and electrical waste for environmentally sound disposal. This took care of a large portion of stockpiles that had grown, and now there's an arrangement with a local waste recycler for consumers to bring in discarded electronics that are amalgamated into shipments to be sent overseas under the Basel Convention for environmentally sound disposal. On another subject, with regard to the Minamata Convention on Mercury, Cook Islands and 6 other countries took part in a project to sample hair from women of childbearing age to determine methylmercury levels. We felt that as fish-eating populations, it is important to Pacific SIDS to take inventory of the impact of dietary exposure to methylmercury. In general, the results exceed the tolerable level of 1 part per million by 2 to 3 times. The source of the methylmercury is mercury vapor from coal-fired power generation that is deposited in the ocean far from its origin. This mercury methylates into the organic form called methylmercury and contaminates the fish we eat. It is unrealistic to tell people who have lived from subsistence fishing for centuries to eat less fish in order to reduce the exposure, as in many remote islands there is no alternative daily protein. Instead, we should focus on reducing pollution to the oceans so that fish is safer to eat for all of us. Marine plastic litter is another form of ocean pollution which is likely to adversely affect the fish we eat. There are toxic additives to plastics, including those used to create the different colors. Research shows that those toxins leach into the marine environment and are taken up by fish. It also means that those plastics cannot be recycled in an environmentally sound manner. In the Pacific small island developing state where I live, there is little we can do to influence manufacturers in order to change this. So we call for a global approach to fix a global problem by asking the corporate sector to adopt more responsible methods in production of plastics. Suggested changes would include not using colorants containing POPs or other toxic substances and reducing the production of one-time plastics. We conclude by noting that many advocate for incineration of plastics recovered from the marine environment and promote as a quick fix waste-to-energy incinerators fueled by these plastics. We advocate for alternative non-incineration methods of disposal of recovered marine plastic litter because incompletely burned plastics release cancer-causing dioxins to the environment and so would increase air pollution. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I think we have last few minutes to accommodate one more speaker from the civil society. And may I invite the representative from Taru Mitra, and who will give us representing children and youth. May I invite Devo Priya Dutta.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am Devopriya Datta from Tarumitra, India, representing the Children and Youth Asia Pacific Regional CSO Engagement Mechanism. We are concerned that despite stricter regulation, toxic chemicals like pesticides, lead, PCBs, and mercury have made its way to our food, the air we breathe, and the water we drink. Children now carry the body burden of all these chemicals and even the unborn fetus. In addition, Article 24 of the Convention of the Rights of the Child recognizes the right of the child to the enjoyment of the highest attainable standard of health, taking into consideration the dangers and risks of environmental pollution. WHO estimates that at least 1.7 million children die each year due to environmental pollution. Low-level chronic exposures to toxic chemicals have been linked to numerous diseases, including loss of IQ, cancer, and neurodevelopmental disorders. Children are especially vulnerable as they eat more food, drink more water, and breathe more air per unit body weight. These impacts are often irreversible. In India, in the state of Punjab, there is a train by the name of Cancer Train because each and every household has a cancer patient. And sadly, it was Punjab which started the Green Revolution in India, and now this state has become a dying civilization. Why? Because of excessive use of pesticides, fertilizers, and other toxic chemicals. Youth at present are facing crisis where they are faced with pollution, loss of jobs in agriculture and other sectors, deteriorating health conditions, and safe working environments. One important concern is that our youth is losing interest in agriculture. Back in India, in my organization, Tarumitra, we are struggling to introduce organic farming to the youth and children. These chemicals are manufactured by transnational companies and various output industries that are driven by profits. There are many gaps in current regulations to hold TNCs for accountable for violations done to people and the environment. By registering toxic chemicals, we are making children and the next generation a part of a massive experiment. Therefore, I urge, in order to achieve the 17 SDGs, number 1, more of green schools, green colleges, and green institutions needed for the youth and children. Number 2, transnational chemical companies phase out or ban highly hazardous pesticides. Also chemicals in products such as toys, foods, and the products that make children sick. These chemicals should be banned. And number 3, other greener, sustainable alternatives such as agroecology along with organic farming is the need of the hour to create a safer environment for our children and youth for the future. By having safer and greener planet, children and youth are bound to be healthy both physically and mentally and will surely reach the highest potential. Article 6 of the CRC recognizes that every child has the inherent right to life, and the survival and development of the child is ensured to the maximum extent possible. Thank you, Chair.
Well, that was an inspirational speech. Thank you. And that concludes the this session, part of agenda item 8. When we did the first, when we opened the floor the first time, we had 8 speakers, 7 countries, 1 NGOs. This session, we have 6 countries and 3 NGOs. So we have 9 this time. We've heard the concern from civil society, and we're doing our best to accommodate you in this forum. So for 13 countries to speak and 4 NGOs, I think that's a very good ratio. So thank you all for your countries' perspectives, as well as NGOs for your comprehensive speeches. Can I invite the Vice Chair to? Yes, Mr. Abu Ahmad Agif, please, can you continue on with it?
It is now my duty to carry on the process of agenda item number 8, is it? 8B. Till on both sides of the agenda item, which is probably more important, which is the lunch, and so we'll carry on both sides of this agenda item. And So now I'd like to invite His Excellency Mr. Raza Bashir Tarar, who is the High Commissioner of Pakistan to Kenya, and also the Vice Chair of the Committee of Permanent Representatives of the UN Environment Program Nairobi, to present the draft resolutions of the United Nations Environment Assembly at its third session as contained in UNEP/AP Environment Forum, parentheses 2/3. His Excellency Mr. Raza Bashir Tarar.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Well, I have some prepared speaking notes, but having heard a very animated exchange from the floor, including some luminaries that I am already aware of, I would also seek your indulgence to just touch upon some of the things that I've heard. But before that, of course, one would be remiss not to appreciate ESCAP, the Royal Government of the Kingdom of Thailand, for all the wonderful functionaries, all you delegates, and of course, Mr. Chair, you and the other elected members of the Bureau. And given your dedication to the cause, I'm sure we are in very safe hands. So, some of the, I think primarily, and this is based on experience gained in the deliberations in Nairobi. You see, with the stakeholders, with the civil society, with NGOs, it's a very usual complaint that they have, that they perhaps do not get much time and so on and so forth, which is, of course, understandable. But at the same time, we also hear the usual refrain that it's an intergovernmental process, and so that the challenge is how do we factor in the inputs. I would very humbly suggest that whatever inputs you have should be shared ahead of time. Like in the case of UNEA 3, if delegations get those inputs ahead of time, then we can perhaps take a fuller look. And in that, I'm sure our excellent coordination mechanism, the Asia Pacific office, regional office, would certainly rise to the occasion. Then obviously, it's also important to go beyond the resolutions in the sense that, as they say, walking the talk. And I think in that regard, South-South cooperation that has been hinted upon or elaborated upon, and sharing of best practices would go a long way and would help us address some of the sticky issues. Now, coming to the resolutions. Dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, it is certainly a singular honor to be here and have this opportunity to speak to this August gathering. We now have less than 3 months for the upcoming third session of the United Nations Environment Assembly, which will take place in the first week of December 2017 in Nairobi, Kenya. And with dedicated work and political guidance from member states and the entire committee, the groundwork and key elements for the 2017 United Nations Environment Assembly are on the right track. I wish to take the opportunity for stock taking on preparations for the 2017 United Nations Environment Assembly, with a special focus on draft resolutions for the third session of UNEA. Considering lessons learned and recommendations from the previous assembly, the bureaus of the Committee of Permanent Representatives and of the United Nations Environment Assembly and the Committee of Permanent Representatives reached an agreement that resolutions should be concrete, action/solution oriented, and aligned to the theme of the Assembly, which is towards a pollution-free planet, as well as to the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. I would also like to underscore that member states agreed to have limited number of resolutions in light of the shorter period of the Assembly than the previous sessions. Right now we have, well, actually it's in all, I would say 5 resolutions, because when we have had another one proposed by the Republic of the Philippines, which actually is meant to be like a resolution from the Asia Pacific group. So the existing ones, 2 draft resolutions. One is eliminating exposure to lead paint, tabled by the United States. And there is substantially improving air quality in cities to within healthy levels for human exposure, proposed by Sudan. There are 2 proposals for draft resolutions. One is an outline on marine litter and microplastics by Norway, and a concept note on environment and health, European Union and its member states. We are expecting to receive more resolutions, up to a maximum of 10, as set out in the timelines for resolution submissions. Member states and regional groups have been requested to send actual text for resolutions by the second deadline of 22nd September 2017. Consultations on draft resolutions will be convened with the participation of lead coordinators from the Bureau of the Committee of Permanent Representatives and focal points assigned from the UN Environment Program divisions for each resolution, in order to facilitate the consultation process and provide expertise to member states. A compilation of draft resolutions will be approved during the 3rd meeting of the Open-Ended Committee of Permanent Representatives, to be held on from 29th November to the 1st of December 2017, and subsequently transmitted to the 3rd session of the United Nations Environment Assembly for its adoption. Ladies and gentlemen, I wish to urge you to closely work with regional groups and individual member states and gather collective ideas with a view to producing resolutions which would be promoting concrete and solid actions to address the multifaceted aspects of pollution. And just a brief outline of what we have by way of resolutions. Regarding okay. Now, overall subject matter to be considered for draft resolutions during the 2017 Environment Assembly is essentially air pollution, then freshwater pollution, which is then subdivided into water pollution and water quality monitoring, then marine pollution, which includes marine pollution as well as marine litter and microplastics, land pollution, which would have soil pollution, then sound management of chemicals, including lead in paints, cross-cutting issues, environment and health nexus, innovative solution partnership platforms. And so we have this a proposal of Norway. I'm sure you have the text. There's a resolution by the USA. And then, of course, the resolution, the outline, or like a provisional note by the EU. Regarding the resolution by tabled by, well, it has recently been circulated, so by the Republic of the Philippines, and it basically calls for synchronization of objectives and activities, especially the conduct of meetings of the conferences of the parties and governing bodies of multilateral environmental agreements and protocols for efficient implementation and monitoring of the Agenda 2030 and for cost reduction and effective participation of UN member states. And of course, it's a very noble idea, and if it meets the approval of the group, and if it can be tabled as a resolution of the Asia Pacific Group, I can assure you it would be a very solid contribution by the group, because right now, as we all know, the United Nations is grappling with the issues of increasing efficiency, cutting down waste, trimming the fat, making the organization leaner yet more efficient. And this synchronization, although it would not be as easy as it seems on paper, would be a huge step forward. Even if it can be done partially, if completely, that will be excellent. And of course, it involves, it has imperatives and compulsions that are perhaps beyond the scope of this forum, but it will be a great step in the right direction. And then, ladies and gentlemen, I would also very respectfully try to give you a sense of how the group is operating in Nairobi. We have seen the group becoming kind of more enthusiastic as, with every passing day. We had this experience in UNEA 2 also. The group had very regular meetings. We had very able support from Mr. Sinha, Ms. Isabel, the other colleagues. We now have a new regional head also. So I think the building blocks are certainly there, and work is being done. And we would urge you to avoid creating the impression of a disconnect between Nairobi and Bangkok. This is the impression that sometimes arises, that perhaps, delegations here are not entirely on the same page as delegations in Nairobi. So basically, more synchronization and coordination is required. And certainly the region stands to gain a lot from, intra-regional cooperation, and certainly we can reap very rich dividends, as it were. So I'll stop here and request the Mr. Chairman to.
Thank you, Mr. Raza
Thank you,
Bashir.
sir.
And perhaps a disconnect between Nairobi and Bangkok. Actually, there seems to be a disconnect between the climate within this hall and the climate outside. And that's why I seem to be inappropriately dressed for the hall. So, because we want to promote, in the Ministry of Climate Change, we want to promote a new CCC, which is called Climate Compatible Clothing. And since one of the ideas for the UNEA 3 is to eat less meat, so I was reading on that. So there's also a climate compatible cuisine also. So now as we move forward, I would like to invite contributions from the members present here. I recognize, first of all, Thailand, who want to take the floor. So Thailand, please take the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In response to this draft resolution for UNEA 3, Thailand see the linkages between the environment and health is a major concern. Unsafe drinking water, poor sanitation, and lack of appropriate solid waste management, wastewater management, and electronic waste management systems can seriously harm human health. It causes not only environmentally health effects, but also economic and social impacts in the long run. We need to put more effort to improve and promote integrated environmental health strategies and also strengthen cooperation among line ministries, related organizations, as well as private sectors. Sustainable environment management and resource efficiency is challenging our region. We realize that 3R's concept, reduce, reuse, and recycle, is a meaningful approach in achieving sustainable waste management. We also recognize the benefit for the integrating 3R and resources efficiency and the need to develop and promote policy development at both national, regional, and international levels to combating pollution as well as promoting resource efficiency co-benefitably. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let me briefly express the comment, Japan's comment on the previous agenda item 8A, which is the report titled "Toward the Pollution-Free Planet." With regard to the air pollution on page 6.1, Japan has a view that the main point of the guidelines should be respected, which means that a quality standard in each country could be different according to public health, technical, and social circumstances. In this sense, we propose to delete or change the meaning of the expression as a minimum for their national standards from the paragraph because it is misleading. Next, let me share Japan's position on the draft resolution for UNIA 3 as follows. First, Japan recognizes the importance of the waste management when it comes to the discussion of pollution, since waste is causing serious problems, especially in developing countries. However, the waste management is not listed as a subject matter to be considered for draft resolution of UNIA 3. Therefore, we would like to ask for other countries' opinion on this subject. It may be a good idea to include this subject in the subject matter. Second, with regard to environment and health and nexus on page 3, Japan considers that the use of terminology such as antimicrobial resistance or One Health approach in the report must be examined in terms of what these words do mean from the perspective of environmental protection, since these terms are usually used in the health fields. On the marine litter and the microplastics resolution proposed by Norway, Japan would like to contribute to discussion at joint group of experts on the scientific aspects of marine environmental protection, as we have been tackling with harmonized standards for monitoring of microplastics in response to the outcome of the G7 Trauma Environment Ministers meeting. Lastly, on the lead paint resolution proposed by the United States, Japan thinks that it is important to work toward reducing human exposures to the lead, as the document titled "Towards the Pollution-Free Planet" states. Each country needs to take actions to reduce such exposure, considering the current circumstances in each country. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Since the draft resolutions with respect to the theme "Towards a Pollution-Free Planet" have been submitted by the member states to the Secretariat of the governing bodies of the UN Environment Programme, although I'm a great proponent of consultations by all the stakeholders, in this session it's only the senior officials who can make the country statements, and we will not be having statements by the other stakeholders. So next I recognize the representative from Kiribati to take the floor, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Since this is the first time Kiribati is taking the floor, Let me congratulate you, Mr. Chair, for assuming this task of chairing this session. Mr. Chair, coming from a small low-lying atoll nation, Kiribati is one of the most vulnerable countries in terms of sea level rise due to climate change. What is also well known is our vulnerability to the impact of waste generated by modern consumption and production patterns affecting the health of our people and environment. With limited land space and limited technical know-how, there is simply nowhere to manage and dispose modern waste safely in atoll countries. Marine pollution is a significant threat to us in the Pacific, and discarded plastic waste and microplastics is considered a priority issue. Most marine pollution comes from land-based sources, and that is where most of the efforts need to happen. Unsustainable consumption and production practices affect our Pacific environments and species, which we depend on for our living. Mr. Chair, despite the challenges we face in waste management, Kiribati continues to invest in the waste management sector through the enactment of Environment Act, which provides a framework on environmental protection, including waste and pollution management. Recently passing the Maritime Act 2017 this year, which provides for the prevention of pollution to the marine environment and other matters related to the implementation of international marine pollution conventions, and operating the Kokimeng recycling system with the private sector, which exports aluminum cans, PET bottles, and wet cell batteries. Additionally, Kiribati, through its partner BIPA Trust, has voluntarily committed during the Ocean Conference to support the ban of single-use plastics. I take this opportunity to thank our partners that continue to assist us to tackle waste issues in Kiribati. Mr. Chair, I would like to emphasize that waste minimization on atolls and small islands like Kiribati is essential. We believe that the 3-hour plus return concept would assist us to prevent the accumulation of waste residues from imported goods and the current waste management challenges. Mr. Chair, Pacific environments require global commitments to sustainable consumption and production. For us to put our plans into action and to complement our efforts at the national level, we need partnerships to enable us to succeed. There is also the need for government agencies to work closely with the private sector and the donor community on waste management to realize our dreams for a pollution-free planet. I thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. My secretary has just increased my knowledge that Kiribati is also in English, and Kiribati is the actual name in the local language. And hopefully we'll see an end to the microplastics, because I'm informed that a new cellulose alternate has been developed, and so soon we'll be seeing these small micro beads disappear, hopefully. Next, I recognize Singapore. Singapore, please take the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before I talk about the resolution, let me just say that with regards to the theme of Unit 3 towards a pollution-free planet, we think that it's a very catchy phrase, very aspirational yet achievable if there's a political will. Now on the priority areas for Unit 3, we have 4 comments to make. First, with regard to the issue of air pollution, our delegation is of the view that it's important that our discussion also address the issue of air pollution in the form of particulate matters such as PM10 and PM2.5. This is given that such particulates are a major form of air pollution. They also have a significant impact on the human health. For example, PM2.5, as we know, can penetrate deep into the lungs, resulting in respiratory conditions. Second, Mr. Chair, water pollution is a critical aspect of pollution that we need to tackle. Hence, our discussion on this issue should be comprehensive. We note that when we talk about pollution, we have wastewater, we have nutrients pollution. The discussion on wastewater, therefore, should include ways to include the control and address the discharges from industrial and commercial sources. Third, Mr. Chair, in addition to addressing domestic sources of pollution, I mentioned this before, it's important that Unit 3 also address the issue of transboundary pollution. Given that the nature of such pollution being transboundary, multilateral fora such as Unit 3 has an important role to play in helping to draw focus and addressing these pollution issues. Finally, I would like to highlight that one of the key ways to deal with pollution is to eliminate or minimize the creation of pollution. This can be done through efforts to enhance sustainable consumption and production, through greener production methods by the industry and better sustainable consumption patterns by consumers. This could help reduce the amount of pollution that will be generated. Therefore, it will be useful to include sustainable consumption and production to our discussions at Unit 3. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Singapore. Yes, indeed, it is a very catchy phrase. But we, within the climate change community, we recognize high ambitions. And so hopefully, within my and Mr. Tarar's lifetimes, we'll see a pollution-free world. I now recognize Mongolia to take the floor, please.
Thank you, Chair. As it's the first time, I would like Mongolia wishes to appreciate the CPR and the UNEP Secretariat for the massive work on the draft papers and the resolutions. Due to the rapid urbanization and natural resource-based economic growth, Mongolia faces lots of challenges, and we receive lots of demands from the community and its people to address the waste and pollution issues. But considering about the theme of the UNIA 3, which is towards the pollution-free plants, Mongolia always supported, and we actually nominated to the team selection when it happened last year. So the challenges of all type of pollution and waste, as well as its impact to the environment, ecosystem, health, and I think each and every national development policies, its implementation actions, it's important to find the synergies and to develop in a systematic thinking approach and sustainable consumption production patterns as well. Just to give some the background that why Mongolia is supporting the ministerial declaration and plus its resolutions. Mongolia now has a revised national program on reducing air pollution and environmental degradation. And also, in order to implement the program, we are focusing mainly on cross-cutting and inclusiveness, and also to bring the public, private sectors, and also to provide the incentives to reduce air pollution, because one of the challenges we face in Mongolia, almost 1 second or 2 or 3rd air terms of the air we face air pollution, and it's hugely bringing the negative impact to the health, and especially the children. Also now we have the revised law on waste, and these are, we try to synergize, and we try to bring all the waste, all type of the waste in the same, in one umbrella, which is the ordinary household, industrial, and plus e-waste and hazardous and chemicals. And the Ministry of Environment and Tourism is in charge of the coordinating and leading, and also to bring, to build the partnership to tackle the waste issue in Mongolia. As I mentioned before, the rapid urbanization bringing Mongolia, the nomadic country, a very dramatic challenge to manage the waste issues. And we are learning from the partners and the cooperating countries how we improve the management. So the government is trying to find its national adapted ways of improving cross-cutting coordination, coherence of the policies based on the science and evidence and trend-based approach, and to build a strong public and private partnership, active engagement of civil societies and NGOs, And we are trying to bring, we are trying to establish the platforms and mechanisms to engage with all the relevant stakeholders. And one of the, and lastly, I would like to say it's been many years since we have started to talk about the synergies and coherence of the policies, systematic patterns. And I would like, Mongolia, I would like to appreciate for Philippine leadership on this draft resolution on synergies between environmental MEAs and then also with other agreements, binding agreements. And the lastly, I would like to say Mongolia supports and there is draft resolutions and the ministerial declaration as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mongolia. And yes, we should encourage more members from the Asia-Pacific region to submit proposals and resolutions, because I'm informed that last time we had 6 proposals and the region was very proactive. But this time we have just had 1 proposal from Philippines. So I encourage all the members here to present more resolutions and proposals for the next UNIA. Now I recognize India to take the floor. Would you like to take the floor now?
Well, initially I thought of reflecting in the last session, but nevertheless I would not like to lose the opportunity. Yeah?
So we can now go to, you take the floor?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, at the outset, let me also congratulate you to conduct this session very efficiently, and then also may congratulate the UNEP Bangkok office in its more ability of doing things. At the outset, we support the kind of resolution which we are bringing in, particularly on the issues like chemicals, waste, and the pollution as a whole. See, pollution we can't see in isolated or compartmental matters, compartmental-wise. So therefore, we must address the pollution. You know, emission into environment is through natural or man-made sources, as our predecessors also made mention that sandstorm and also are the upcoming issues. So therefore, we need to address these issues. Once they're released into environment, they contaminate soil, air, surface water, groundwater, etc. And then there is ever increasing concern because of the toxicity of chemicals, the volatility, the persistence, long-range transport. It's not limiting itself to one country or a region, and therefore in the atmosphere and linked to the wide range of health effects. We are talking of the pollution and health effects as well, which need to be seen as the outcome efforts of the impact of pollution. All countries, including our region, as Mr. Chair, you have suggested yourself that we need to have more proposals into this process of consultation. Need to be unrelated to use, emission, and management of environmental pollution, not only from the ambient, but also geogenic and anthropogenic, and particularly on the waste management. So therefore, there has to be, these all need to be deliberated, and more so the convergence of various MEAs in this regards are more necessary rather than in isolation consideration. As we have been listening to many our fellow countries, the different countries may differ in the relative importance of various pollution-related issues, ranging from production of chemicals, the processes, waste disposal, atmospheric emission. Therefore, different countries have varying degrees of developmental imperatives and different technical and financial capabilities. Therefore, we need to address the control and specific circumstances and capacity building as a whole need to be taken if we need to see a comprehensive approach to the pollution control. Therefore, we perhaps need to encourage and facilitate to develop an implementation plan, country-specific. Each country has a specific implementation plan. We, in India, we have a specific plans for waste management, the pollution control, the chemicals, waste. So therefore, perhaps there could be a possibility we can explore that to have a region-specific implementation plan and obligations. That could be one of the ways we can see, and therefore we can provide adequate provisions for capacity building, technical and financial assistance in this matter. Maybe a template could be developed, and this can be discussed if it's feasible. That could be further elaborated and implementation by each member countries depending upon the capacity. I mean, this is a suggestion maybe. So therefore, Mr. Chair, these are the primary views what we can think of. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, India. We now have a request from the Philippines. Philippines, please take the floor.
Yes, good afternoon to everyone. The Philippines wishes to thank the forum for including in the meeting agenda a discussion on draft resolutions for submission to UNEA 3. Resolution calling for, this is entitled, the resolution calling for the synchronization of objectives and activities, especially the conduct of meetings on the conferences of parties / governing bodies of multilateral environmental agreements and protocols for efficient implementation and monitoring of the Agenda 2030 and for the cost reduction and effective participation of UN member states. The proposed resolution to synchronize the objectives and activities of the multilateral environmental agreements / protocols is consistent with the recent appeal of the UN Secretary General for coherence to avoid dispersion of funding. The coherence of objectives and activities, particularly the cycle of meetings of COPs / governing bodies of multilateral environmental agreements protocols will not only reduce costs but also promote the efficient implementation and monitoring of Agenda 2030 and significantly improve the participation of member states, particularly developing countries which need to efficiently utilize funding for international conferences. Efficiently coordinated and synchronized objectives and activities of MEA or protocols will avoid duplication of programs and activities, especially in the regional and national levels. It will also reduce the need for international travels for environmental ministers and staff, thus giving more time and emphasis to national program and implementation. The UNEA, being the world's highest level decision-making body for the environment, is in the best position to initiate the proposed synchronization. At this point, we welcome and take note of inputs and recommendations from member states in order to improve the draft resolution. We also take note of the dates in the roadmap to UNEA 3 in Nairobi from December 4 to 6 of the current year, which will elaborate on the draft resolution. Again, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. We now have about 5 minutes, and my secretary tells me that we are not supposed to go beyond time. So we have got 2 requests now, one from China and the next from Indonesia. So I would request that I believe we cannot take any further requests before lunch. We will take some after lunch. So first I recognize China. Please take the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I have 2 points. One is with the draft resolution proposed by Philippines. I'm confused whether this will be a proposal for the regional proposal for the draft resolution for Union 3, or this is a member state proposal to Union 3. This is one clarification. Seems that the draft the proposal was circulated yesterday. We have no time to study it, to learn it. And my delegation is not in a position to have official statement right now at this moment. I just want to express our concerns on this point with regard to the issue. Yes, in fact, there is too many ministerial level conference, forums in the world and in the region. I completely share the same opinions with our colleagues from Philippines. And as a senior staff in the Ministry of Environment, that I get myself sometimes tedious to prepare the work, sometimes the same, for the ministers to go to different forums. So that's why I'm sorry to say that China is not in a position to support the proposal to have this ministerial level forum at the beginning. Probably the Secretariat could understand it. So that's why I say I share some same concerns or opinions with the Philippines. But the proposal can be made in theory, in my opinion. In practice, it will be very difficult to operate. Let me tell you why. Asia Pacific is a region with very diverse of national circumstances. Within the country, the national government, different ministries is taking the responsibilities for different conventions. The ministry taking for biodiversity is not taking the convention for sometimes for mercury, for example. The ministry taking for the ocean issues is not taking the issues for land. This is so the conventions in the national governments, they have different competence authorities. This is one reason. Second reason, even within the same ministry, if the ministry is taking two conventions, two conventions, the different group, different staff is taking the responsibilities for the different convention. So when such a proposal can solve the problem for head of delegation, or even sometimes difficulty for head of delegation, but as a staff, even different from different ministries. So that's my concern. This is not an official statement. This is for your consideration. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your understanding.
Thank you very much, China. We just have 1 minute left. So Indonesia, please, you have your 1 minute now.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Try my best. Thank you for the briefing on the stage of development of the draft resolution. Okay, thank you. Of the UNEA 3. And I share the view of for having the more concrete and more affirmative action of the resolution. With regard to the draft resolution on lead paint, on chemicals management, as well as marine litter, Indonesia will continue its support and effort in implementing the agenda of the resolution. As we do believe the effectiveness in tackling environmental issue cannot be separated from a number of important factors, such as strong support and commitment from the political leaders, multi-layer partnership and collaborations at all levels, in all regions, good governance and right approach through promoting science-based policy, as well as availability of sound technology and mobilized resources. Thus, we have to ensure that all these elements, as well as sustainable development goals and other multilateral environmental agreements such as climate change, biodiversity, and combating the desertifications, are included in the guidance our common effort to the UNEA 3. Acknowledging environmental challenges is unique and time-specific. Thus, recognizing national socio-economic circumstances and priorities, capacity, as well as level of development in implementation of the agenda of resolution is essential. To ensure the implementation of the resolution in the future, my delegation is of the view that regional platform is essential. Thus, I believe UN Environmental Regional Office, in collaboration with other UN agencies, has a pivotal and important role. Lastly, we hope that the draft resolution can focus on not what, but also on how to implement the agenda toward pollution-free planets in the long term and how to put the vision into the actions. I thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. We'll take DPR Korea after the lunch break. And Now, about 2 o'clock? Yes. Oh, yes, okay. Yes. First of all, I'd like to thank Mr. Raza Bashir Tarar for his presentation. And we will have the senior officials, they will review the draft resolutions and they will provide the regional input. I also thank all the participants for a very fruitful deliberation. And now I would like to hand over to the Secretariat for some housekeeping announcements.
Ladies and gentlemen, we will now have a lunch break until 2 o'clock. During the lunch break, I strongly encourage you to visit the exhibits in the pavilion. We will also have a side event from 1 to 2 o'clock titled Astana Green Bridge Initiative, New Perspectives of Interregional Cooperation for Sustainable Development. I also have an announcement regarding the dinner reception for tomorrow night. We would like to invite you to attend the Asia Environmental Enforcement Awards ceremony that will be held tomorrow night. The ceremony will be held from 5 p.m. onwards in the reception hall on the ground floor in this building. Dinner and refreshments will be served, and we would encourage you to please attend and help us celebrate the award winners. So to repeat, that's for tomorrow night, 5 p.m. onwards, downstairs in the reception hall. Thank you.
Thank you very much. See you after lunch then. Thank you.
It will be on the website. Huh? It will be on the website. Which website? MC website. Are you MC? No. Did MC invite everybody to the idea? Yes. Yeah. Do they know that there is a lunch? Yes. I haven't heard it. They announced it. Oh, he announced it.